Good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to call the planning board meeting of March 12th, 2019 to order. The first thing on our agenda tonight is the minutes from February 26th. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of February 26, 2019, as corrected.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. The next thing is public comment. If anyone has anything to say that's not on their agenda, we give 2 minutes at this time every Tuesday night that we meet for them to come up. Hearing none, we'll move on. Public hearings, petitioner's article for Springtown meeting 2019, 240-23 and 240-38 accessory apartments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Did we want to discuss taking any of those matters out of
Oh, yes.
order? Because we have a few folks who've come from afar
Yes, we did.
and
I'm sorry.
have their meter running.
I agree.
Okay.
That's up to the board.
Well, then I would move to take the petitioner articles for spring 2019 town meeting out of order.
I'll second.
Actually, Tom had a suggestion he went over with me, and I probably
Okay.
should have told you what it was before this. He, and it does that. He wanted to take, well, I wanted to take the accessory, not the, one of the accessory apartments in William Rogers and bring it up so he doesn't have to wait for all these things. I also wanted to bring Blue Flag up ahead because it's a decision we've already gone through and we can move it through quickly. And lastly, we wanted, then we wanted to bring on Nature's Remedy and put that right after that. Is that the way we discussed it, Tom?
Yeah, most of those folks, well, not most of them, but several of them are about 2 hours from here in their commute, as well as their meter running. And while it's a lovely, not snowy night, it's up to the board.
Okay, then I will move that we take, which order?
Rogers, Blue Flag, Nature's Remedy.
Out of order in that order.
Okay,
Of the
I'll
order,
second.
in the new order.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that brings Mr. Rogers, right? Is that the first one up now?
That's what
Yes,
you
Blue
said.
Rogers.
Is he- Okay, you're up. You come up and give us a presentation on what you're
Do you have
what you're looking
what
for.
we're doing and
I
what
didn't
we're
realize I had to
excited
give a presentation. I'm just, and I would like to put an accessory apartment in my house. It's a existing structure. And removing one bedroom from the house. And it's being done to code according to the zoning regulations.
Do you have anything to show us, what it's gonna look like, floor plans?
Yeah, oh,
But, hold on, we have them?
Yeah.
But do you have them,
Let me see if we've got them on this.
yeah, we require everything, we always have a presentation on everything, and we require that they be shared electronically, so the people at home can see them.
oh, well, I do have that.
Well, He might,
I
you
don't
might,
have it with me.
he might have it. Let's see what,
I don't think so. Because they didn't ask me for it at the planning.
Let's see how we did.
Yeah.
Wasn't there what? It's not a planning board item. We talked about it already.
Rogers.
Yes.
Yep, so, fortunately, we have some astute technical assistance available. Thank you, Corey.
That's existing.
Right. And
this may be more confusing, to have them in a book, you can't get
then
out.
something new.
There we go.
Yeah, this is the second floor.
What is that? Is that the only rendering we have of what he wants to do?
Just that.
Or is it under here?
Do you have a rendering or a picture what the house building looks like?
Yes, I think it's on here.
This is it.
This is the existing, you want to see the elevation?
Well, the elevation is what we're looking for, yeah. There we go. Okay.
So everything looks, yeah, you can see there's a deck on the south elevation and a landing off the side on the west elevation.
Yep.
And on the east elevation, it's pretty much the same except for this landing.
What about the materials of the wall? What's the siding like? We're trying to get an idea what it looks like.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it's shingled.
Shingle, that's pretty typical.
There's
That's,
some photographs in here too, I
oh,
think,
photograph would be good. That would really help.
or maybe not.
Maybe not.
No, I guess
Okay.
the photographs didn't make it in, I'm sorry.
Now, what elevation is facing the road?
That would be the west
East-
elevation.
West elevation? Okay.
What about, where's the calculations? We have some requirements that show, that you need to show the square footage of the main house, how big it is, and then the relationship. And we would really like it to be right on the front of that plan.
Wow,
Usually a plan, it's the basic calculations for area,
yeah, that's on the site plan,
okay?
but I don't know if you'd be able to see it. Well, I can read it up here.
What's the living area of the main house?
It's about 1,300 square feet.
You show that anywhere?
Yeah, it's on the site plan, I think. That's the coverage.
Yeah, that's the lot coverage.
It's lot coverage.
Existing is 13.7%, proposed is 14.8.
We're not talking lot coverage. What we're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
this bylaw, have you met with staff? Did you have a meeting with Corey?
No,
Okay, we're not gonna do this tonight.
okay.
Okay? I have a feeling that everything we're looking for, it'd be like having a staff meeting
Yeah,
and going through it. So you need to sit down with Corey Pacheco and go through what we need. You're gonna have, we require to know the size of the house because the accessory apartment can only be 40% of it.
right.
And that calculation should be right on the front, because if you don't have that, we're not going any further.
All right, I've got all that, but I
But
didn't
no, but we
realize,
wanna see it in a,
wasn't really aware of what was going to happen.
so we make a meeting with him and Corey and take it up. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right, well, I'm sorry, we didn't communicate better with you.
Okay, so we need to move to continue this to,
March 26th is our next meeting.
okay, March 26th? Okay. So
I'll second.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that a,
We always meet on Tuesday night.
sorry to hold you up.
No, oh, it's not holding up, sorry.
Learning experience.
Okay,
Okay, now we go
back on the
to
agenda.
blue flag.
Blue flag.
Blue, is it blue?
Oh, we need to hand that back.
Yeah, back.
So you will find the
Yes,
decision for
blue
blue
flag.
flag in your red.
And so that's how we're gonna do it, by red. And we got new books tonight, folks, so we're popping around all over the
This is
place.
very fancy.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's faster, though. So we have a decision in here?
Correct, there is a draft motion for the decision for the site plan as well as for the special permit.
Okay. Want me to read it?
Yes,
You have,
Bob, if you're up.
3 sheets, double-sided in your blue packet.
Yes.
Go for it, please.
Okay, this is blue flag, okay. Draft motion, February 28th, 2019. Motion that the planning board vote to approve the application of Blue Flag Development LLC under Article 39, site plan review of the zoning bylaw for the addition of 1,000 square feet or more of structure and the addition of 5 or more parking spaces located at 836 Palmer Avenue, also shown on Assessors Map 35, Section 02, Parcel 007, Lot 000, and as depicted on plans entitled A, proposed campground improvements at 836 Palmer Ave, prepared by Bracken Engineering, Inc., dated December 20th, 2018, revised February 21st, 2019, scale as noted, sheets 1 through 16. B, planting plan prepared by Ahern LLC, dated February 14th, 2019, scale 1 inch equals 40 feet, 8 sheets. C, ATC clubhouse floor plans prepared by Workshop APD Architecture, DPC, dated December 19th, 2018, scale 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the applicant proposes to redevelop the existing campground, which has been operating commercial as said use dating back to the 1920s. The property is located at 836 Palmer Avenue, is situated on a 12.72 acre parcel and is zoned public use, PU. A front yard parking field is proposed in order to keep the site and setting free of automobiles. The applicant has applied to the planning board under Article 22, Chapter 240, 109E for a special permit for the addition of front yard parking as defined in Article 3 definitions. The board will decide each application accordingly. As proposed, there will be a reduction in the number of total campsites from 122 to 108, 98 new Airstream rental trailers, and 10 canvas tents on raised platforms. The proposal will upgrade utilities, including septic and water service, improve the site drainage, improve ADA-compliant access throughout the site, along with 5 ADA-accessible trailers and 2 ADA-accessible tent sites. The design and layout minimize, where possible, impacts to the existing natural landscape and topography, and propose the planting of approximately 1,100 new landscape features, the addition of 8-foot fencing along the northern lot line to provide privacy for abutters, and 6-foot fencing along Palmer Avenue to screen front yard parking, and raise most existing structures on site and replace with a central clubhouse and 2 smaller buildings. Under site plan review, the board finds the plans conform to the dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaw concerning building setbacks and height. The board finds the application satisfies Article 22 parking requirements of the zoning bylaw, including the number and location of off-street parking and loading spaces and aisle widths. Article 23 performance requirements of the zoning bylaw includes nuisances, site design, and stormwater management. And Article 25 landscape requirements. The Falmouth Fire Rescue Department has reviewed and revised plans referenced above and is satisfied with emergency access and circulation around the site, as well as the placement of fire hydrants. The applicant has responded to the Falmouth Engineering Division's referrals dated January 17th, 2019, with revised cover letter and plans dated February 21st. Falmouth Engineering Division's provided a revised referral dated February 25th, 2019. The applicant has not addressed any outstanding issues stated within this referral, but the board finds that the remaining comments can be addressed administratively. The Falmouth Water Department referral dated January 18, 2019 provided review and comment of the proposed water utilities. The applicant has responded in a letter dated February 21st, 2019 with changes included but not limited to the inclusion of an 8-inch ductile iron main with 2-inch service branches. The project has received preliminary plan approval from the Water Department and will require further review. The Board of Health at their meeting of February 25th, 2019 approved the innovative alternative septic system proposed by the applicant. The Planning Board finds that the site plan, architectural elevations, and landscaping plan for the proposed commercial campground appropriate. The Planning Board thanks the applicant and the development team for revising the above-referenced plans per the Planning Board's comment, as well as meeting directly with abutters and community members to address their concerns. The Planning Board strongly encourages the applicant to continue working closely with abutters and the community as the project develops. Conditions. 1. The plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the Planning Board at a public meeting to determine if a modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to Section 24183B of the zoning bylaw, no permit for full or partial occupancy shall be issued until the Planning Board is satisfied that the conditions of this approval have been met.
I will second it. Oh,
We
that's
all
a
set?
new, that's another motion.
Another motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Slow like that.
So
So that's the special permit.
That's the special
That's special
permit,
And that was the site plan part.
Okay.
And then we got the special permit.
okay? Phase 2, in which Doris gets her oats. Motion that the planning board vote to approve the application of Blue Flag Development LLC and grant a special permit pursuant to section 240-109E to construct parking areas within the front yard located at 836 Palmer Avenue, also shown on Assessors Map 35, Section 02, Parcel 007, Lot 000, as depicted on plans entitled A, Proposed Campground Improvements at 836 Palmer Avenue, prepared by Bracken Engineering, Inc., dated December 20th, 2018, revised February 21st, 2019, scale as noted, sheets 1 through 16. B, Planting Plan prepared by Ahern LLC, dated February 14th, 2019, scale 1 inch equals 40 feet, 8 sheets. C, ATC Clubhouse Floor Plans prepared by Workshop ADP Architecture DPC, dated December 19th, 2018, scale 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the applicant, Blue Flag Development LLC, is applying to the planning board for a special permit under section 240-109E for parking located within the front yard as defined in Article 3, definitions. The applicant is proposing a new parking field within the front yard of the property in order to keep the site and setting free of automobiles. The special permit granting authority shall grant a special permit only upon its written determination that the proposed use will not have adverse effects which overbalance its beneficial effects on either the neighborhood or the town in view of the particular characteristics of the site. Pursuant to section 240-216 of the zoning bylaw, the determination shall indicate and shall include consideration of each of the following. A, adequacy of the site in terms of size for the proposed use. The planning board finds the size of the site adequate. The minimum lot size is, in a public use zoning district, is 45,000 square feet. There is no proposed subdivision, so the parcel will retain its 554,140 square feet of lot size. The lot coverage by structure is allowed up to 40% of the lot. The proposed new structures is at 3.7% of lot coverage. Total lot coverage is allowed up to 70%. The proposed lot coverage, pavement, and structure for the project is 9%. Required lot width is 150 feet. The parcel has a lot width of 570 feet. Minimum frontage required is 100 feet. The parcel contains approximately 835 feet of frontage on Palmer Avenue. The proposed project comply with these requirements. B, suitability of the site for the proposed use. The planning board finds the site suitable for the proposed use. The zoning is public use, which allows campgrounds by special permit. The property is currently used as a seasonal campground and has been in use as such by the same family since 1961. It is well known to have been used as a campground as far back as the 1920s. The surrounding land uses are primarily residential and agricultural. The ways serving the site are part of the principal roadways of the town and the state highway system. C, impact on traffic flow and safety. The board finds the impact on traffic flow and safety to be acceptable. Currently, there is one curb cut. DMD Transportation Consultants estimated in their study of the site that approximately 23 vehicle trips during the weekday morning peak hours, 30 vehicle trips during the weekday evening at peak hours, and 31 vehicle trips during the Saturday midday peak hour. Compared to existing campground conditions with 122 sites of the proposed conditions are estimated to generate 3 fewer vehicle trips during weekday evening peak and 4 fewer during Saturday midday period. The proposed camper will generate 30 to 50 fewer daily vehicle trips and change from camper trailer sites to rental camper trailers in place will result in a reduction in the vehicle type by reducing the number and type of towed vehicles. The site abuts and has open access to the Shining Sea Bikeway. The board finds no net increase in traffic-related impacts over existing conditions. D, impact on neighborhood visual character, including views and vistas. The planning board finds no impact on neighborhood visual character, including views and vistas. The buildings and landscaping proposed by the applicant will be an improvement over what currently exists today on the site. The installation of buffer fencing and landscaping will increase privacy with abutters and screen the front yard parking field from the public view shed on Palmer Ave. There are no significant views or vistas being affected by the height or location of the proposed buildings. The board finds the project will preserve and enhance the existing natural features of the site. E, adequacy of method of sewage disposal, source of water, and drainage. The board finds the method of sewage disposal, source of water, both potable and for fire suppression, and the drainage, stormwater management for the project to be adequate. The redevelopment of the site will reduce impervious areas and upgrade existing drainage and contain all stormwater on site. The applicant has received Board of Health approval for the proposed on-site innovative alternative wastewater treatment system. The proposed water system has been revised based on Water Department comments and has received preliminary approval and is subject to final approval. Department of Public Works maintains town water in the area. F, adequacy of utilities and other public services. The board finds that these to be adequate. The site is served by power and telephone utilities and is adjacent to other public services, including cable and internet connections. G, the effect of the proposed project on the adequacy of the supply of affordable housing in the town. The planning board finds no effect on the supply of affordable housing in the town. H, the decision of the planning board under Article 39, site plan review. The decision of the planning board under Article 39, site plan review dated March 12, 2019, will be incorporated and made part of this decision in its entirety, including but not limited to the plans cited and conditions imposed. I, compliance with all applicable sections of the zoning bylaws, including but not limited to all performance requirements under Article 22 and Article 24. The planning board finds compliance with the applicable sections 240, 109E of the zoning bylaw and with the incorporation of the planning board's decision under Article 39, site plan review, all performance requirements under Article 22 and 25. Therefore, given the above and conditions to be imposed below, the planning board finds the proposed to have parking with the front yard will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this chapter, and that the proposed will not have adverse effects which overbalance its beneficial effects on either the neighborhood or the town. Conditions. One, the decision of the planning board under Article 39 site plan review dated March 12, 2019 for Blue Flag Development LLC as a letter to building commissioner and attached hereto is hereby adopted and made part of this decision in its entirety, including but not limited to plans cited for approval and conditions imposed therein. 2, pursuant to section 240, 221 of the zoning bylaw, the special permit shall lapse 3 years from the date it is granted if a substantial use thereof has not sooner commenced except for good cause. 3, install bike rack as shown on site plan.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. You're all set. Okay. Now, it's Nature's Remedy, correct? Oh, that's-
You're gonna do Jason?
Jason's not here, correct? We don't have to hurry it.
That's correct.
Oh,
So we don't have to hurry up for him, we can do that at the
He
end.
he sat here to,
last-
he got a fascinating lesson in civics, which is so lacking in schools these days. He was here briefly, and I told him he could mail in his homework tonight, he
Yeah.
didn't have to stay.
Okay.
Okay. So, Nature's Remedy for the applicant.
So, Justin Lundberg, representing the applicant, Nature's Remedy. With me, I have Dave Miller, Ben Hardwinger, very good, and Tom Bunker, who's going to be doing our site plan. So, I was before you folks a couple months ago in regard to the bylaw change, and now I'm here in regard to the RMD that we're applying for on T-Ticket Highway. As you know, we're applying for a registered marijuana dispensary, 31 T-Ticket Highway, and we were granted a host community agreement by the town of Falmouth back November 2018 to operate such a facility. Our company is Nature's Remedy of Massachusetts. Our cultivation site is in Lakeville. We're a vertically integrated company, meaning that we're going to be growing all of our own product at our Lakeville facility, and it will be sold at the facilities we have, at the retail locations that we have in other towns across the Commonwealth. Right now, we're just completing construction of a facility in Millbury that will be both adult use and medical. We're about to begin construction in Tingsboro for an adult use facility, and in Rowley for an adult use facility. And we have started construction in Acton for a medical facility, and here in Falmouth would be another medical-only facility. So the expectations for tonight, we're here to answer questions about our company, about the proposed location, here to get public comment. Our team here will answer any questions that we can. Any questions that we can't answer, we will get back to you in short order. We don't have any expectations. This would be a hearing that is closed tonight. We would anticipate continuing it for many reasons. First and foremost, we, as the board did, received a letter on Friday from a condominium association that we would be a part of if we completed the purchase of the real estate. And they pointed out some issues that they had with our project that we certainly would have to work through with them in order for this to, to work out for everybody. So with that being said, I think I'm going to hand it off to Tom. He can go over the site plan with you, with the existing conditions, what it's going to look like, and you guys can ask any questions on the site plan, and then I can come back and we can go over more about the business, but I think it makes sense for you guys to see the site plan before that, if that's okay. Okay?
Thank you.
Let's see. Thank you. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker. Work for BSS Design, and we prepared this site plan proposed for Nature's Remedy. It's the location is near the corner of Route 28, T-Ticket Highway, and Jones Road is just to the south of this. Could actually show you on the locus map. I get over here. You have Jones Road, Worcester Court, right in there where it says T-Ticket, of course, is Stop and Shop. And right on the corner of Worcester Court is the bank. And so this property is just to the north. You see here labels Cape Cod Bank and Trust. So this property is just to the north of that bank property. Has access off of Route 28. And it also has access, there's an easement across this property to Worcester Court. So there's two good means of access on here. This is the existing condominium building. Right in here, it's at number 31 T-Ticket Highway. The unit in question is down here, the ground level. The end unit right here, and part of the second floor also. So we have all this existing parking. This had been a bank with a drive-through, so this area is entirely paved right here. Had been an island for the drive-through teller and all going in here. You have parking calculations by which this use based on the floor area and the use type, retail and office, you need 14 and a half, we call it 15 parking spaces, which we put right in this area, 1 through 8 going up this side, and then 9 through 15 on this row of parking here. There's an aisle down the middle. This is, it's 60 feet across from bay to bay. And there's another, I think it's about 18 feet remaining of pavement here, which can be used for snow plowing, push the snow off to that side. That's on the side heading back toward a wooded area toward the Falmouth Mall in that location. This existing door will have to be made handicap accessible, and it turns out that basically this floor level is almost the same level as the parking pavement here. It's nearly a level walk going across, and there will have to be, I won't call it a ramp because it's does not exceed 5 to 1, but will be a sloped walk coming up one side to meet this level, and then a sloped walk going down again. I have a detail of it here. Nothing exceeds 5%, so there are no handrails required for any of this. There is some shrubs and some overgrown materials, part of the, I guess it's the state regulations for this type of facility requires that the area be cleaned up so there's no trees and shrubs which might block the view or that people can hide behind. So there are some vines and things and not good-looking shrubs and a dead tree or two that'll be removed out of here. On this side, a couple large trees. There is a patch of knotweed that grows up, which will have to be cut down in this area here. Otherwise, the site is pretty wide open. There are no expansion of pavement, no expansion of footprint, no expansion of floor area as a result of this project. That explains the site plan, I believe.
Charlotte, you have any questions?
I'd like to see what it's going to look like.
You have any elevations of the,
I don't have any elevations. It'll look the same, just touched up, as far as I know. Is that correct?
Yeah, no changes.
No changes to the elevation. It's just,
go ahead.
it needs paint and some renovations.
I realize these are new enterprises, but you've presented no traffic generation report, and I wonder, do you have any idea what kind of traffic a facility like, you've met the requirements, but what kind of traffic does a facility like this attract?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, Justin.
So, the anticipated use would be about 100 patients a day. I think in the handout that I had sent to you, I went through the numbers as to how many patients are registered in the state, how many RMDs would be open. The numbers are, there's 55,000 registered marijuana card patients in the state. About 35,000 of them actually visit RMDs. There's 50 RMDs that are open right now, and there's 50 more applications in process. So there will be at least 100 open by the time this would ever be open. And now we're just talking medical. This has nothing to do with adult use. So based upon 35,000 active users a month and 100 dispensaries open, you're talking 350 people will generally go to a dispensary. Now, if you're in a city near Boston, you might get a higher traffic load. Typical statistics would be 100 visits a day. If we're open 10 to 11 hours a day, you're talking 9 visits an hour. Average time in a dispensary would be 10 minutes. We have pre-ordering available, so most people who are going to order will order online, or they could come in and order there. It's not going to be a place where people hang out or stay. You come in, you place your order, or you pick up your order and you leave. So that would be what we anticipate.
How often does a person with a prescription tend to show up? Most prescriptions are time-bound. About what period of time would?
Yeah, I believe they can get a 60-day prescription. Ben, is that, you get a 60-day prescription. So they could go as long as 60 days if they bought the full amount that the prescription allowed in that time period.
Thank you.
So anecdotally, there's a RMD on the corner of, if you're familiar with Natick at all, Route 30, Route 9, Mass Pikes, Bean Street. There's a RMD there. There's D'Angelo's next door. I was at that D'Angelo's eating the other day. I was there for 2 hours. Not one person went in and out of the RMD. So I think that it's a sporadic traffic. There's one in Acton that we've looked at that has about 10 patients a day, not an hour. So the number that I'm giving you is 100 a day is very ambitious. And also statistics have shown that in states where recreational dispensaries have opened, people don't apply and get their cards. It costs money to get a card. You're put on a registry if you get a card. Some people don't want their name associated with having that identification. And so people although it's discounted going to an RMD, people will go to a rec store. It's easier, more available. So one would anticipate the usage at the RMDs to decrease, especially as the state has more facilities open for recreational use.
I see you're not planning to add any lighting to this site. What are the hours that you'll be open?
The board can decide the hours that we're open. That's within your purview. So the state leaves RMD hours of operation up to the local boards. Typically, we're like at 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. We would ask for those hours. We would alter those hours based upon usage. If we are open for a couple of months and nobody's coming at 10 in the morning, maybe we open noon to 7. But typically a 10 to 7 type of operation is what we'd be looking for.
Thank you.
Paul, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple if you don't mind. The end of that building's pretty bad shape. The windows are broken and whatnot, so it's gonna be, whatever goes in there is gonna be an improvement.
Inside's just as bad.
Right now, what's the closest medical marijuana facility to here? I know there's one in Fairhaven, I think there's one in Mashpee. What's the closest one? What's the density of these operations in this area?
So, do one of you two want to answer that? As far as closest, you're Mashpee?
Oh, Mashpee's open, yes.
Excuse me, would you mind stepping up to the mic? No one at home can hear you when you do that.
So Mashpee would be the closest medical. David Miller.
So there's quite a few around. There's not gonna be one that's gonna attract a lot of people into Falmouth, then? Is that what you're implying?
Well, I think that there are a number of applicants in the process for the Cape, but at this point in time, there aren't that many that are open right now. I mean, I think there are 4 or 5 on the whole Cape that are open. A lot of the Cape towns have banned recreational as well, the mid and the lower Cape. Some at the upper Cape have recreational opportunities, but generally, it would just be medical. I guess Plymouth, too, would also be one of the locations, as well as Fall River. But there's not a lot of them down here yet, but I think that they will, they'll come over time. It takes a while to get your approvals.
I've been to the medical marijuana facility in Brookline.
Yep.
That's extremely well-run, well-organized. I was very impressed with the operation. How does your company compare with that operation? Are you much smaller? Are you just starting out, or they seem to be well-established?
Yeah, Brookline is New England Treatment Access, I believe. It's NETA, and they have been one of the early companies that were able to be approved, to get approved and open. So they have a track record. I don't think that they have as many licenses or approvals that we are currently working through. They have their own cultivation, so it's similar in that regard. Vertical integration that Justin mentioned earlier, we'll be growing ourselves as well. Which the need for a higher capital investment is there when you have your own cultivation, so we're similar in that regard. But our first dispensary, as Justin said, will be Millbury, that will be open. So we're not actually, open yet, but soon. I think we have every confidence that we will run as professional an organization as any other company.
That particular operation is in a former bank, so they have some
Right.
really serious controls.
Right, yeah.
They
This
have
was a bank,
tellers
I
and they
guess,
have,
too. At one point, this was a bank, too.
Locked areas for marijuana and so forth. But they also have a policeman outside from Brookline.
Yeah.
Is that your intent, to have a policeman on duty when this is an operation?
We wouldn't intend to have a police officer there. We would have security, unarmed security at this point. There are strict requirements at the state level regarding security. We've had meetings, a number of meetings with the chief here in Falmouth, Chief Dunn. He met with our security head as well, and when the time comes, if we get there, we would go over all our security plans with him. Those would be not public information for the obvious
I think the
reason.
policeman's there more for traffic control than anything else.
Yeah, and I think that that's an interesting point that you make, because we would probably, at the board's, discretion, and also in tandem with the chief, we would talk about if we got approved and we were opening, some type of traffic mitigation that will make the chief comfortable that we're taking the right steps. That could be police details initially. There certainly might be more individuals coming in the early, the onset of the opening, right? So that would be something that, at the board's discretion and also with the chief, that we would talk about if we got to that
That's a
point.
very congested area, so it's somewhat difficult. One final question. There's been a couple of letters from abutters objecting to the location of this facility. How have you dealt with abutters in some of your other facilities, or how do you plan to deal with the abutters in this case? Have
Well,
you
we're
met with
always-
them, for example?
Yeah, we're always open to sitting down and talking with anyone who has concerns or questions and telling them about us and explaining the operation. There certainly are a lot of questions that people have about how these will function. They might not have visited one like yourself, so they don't know. And we're open at any time to sit down, and we will reach out to those people and invite them and ask them if they'll, entertain such a meeting with us.
Thank you.
Pam, you got anything? They have one in Acton here. Did you hear that?
I was waiting for you to say that. So just out of curiosity, where is it in Acton?
Great Road,
Where?
what's the number, 436? There's actually there's
Excuse me, you got to talk to the mic. No one at home can hear you.
Sorry, so it's 436 Great Road in Acton is the proposed location. And there's a spa for your feet there, and there's also a laser RMD place in that location. Do you know where that is? They're putting an auto dealership across the street as well.
I think one of the things that's interesting, and I'm not sure why it's called a marijuana treatment center, despite the fact that it's really a medical dispensary. But I think that's very off-putting for people, because in people's minds, if they're not familiar with marijuana, its use, I don't know who would be in this day and age, but thinking of people who have some problem with marijuana coming for
yes.
treatment, and that's not what this is. You have to have a prescription, you come in, and it's quite different. And hopefully, when you reach out to your neighbors and the abutters, you'll go into some explanation as to, the reality of what this is. I do know in other places, there have been break-ins into the areas where the growing is taking place, which is why I think security, is very important, especially at nighttime.
So obviously, we're not
No
growing.
cultivating here, though, right?
There's no cultivating.
No cultivation.
And there's no cultivation. There's very specific requirements as to the vault where everything's stored. The metal is, there's a metal lathe that's in between two layers of gypsum board, and it would just, watching the contractors cut it to put it into place, the police would be there an hour before they even got
Okay.
through it. And the vaults can't be on exterior walls. There's all sorts of regulations as to how things have to be placed in the dispensary in order to, in order to establish security. And as to your point about treatment center, the outward look and appearance of these facilities, we can't advertise, right? Our advertising is strictly controlled by the state. We can't have pictures of, nor would we want to, have pictures of marijuana leaves or paraphernalia. Nothing can be visible from the outside. The windows are either tinted or not, or they're covered. And so there's nothing visible from the outside. There's no advertisement over the door. And otherwise, you wouldn't know that it was a dispensary, other than the fact that if you're looking to go there and you search it on the internet, our advertising is very limited as to what we can do. If you try and advertise on social media, your accounts are taken away. It's a very
Controlled.
It's a very controlled environment. And so I think for a lot of our neighbors, we've, certainly this isn't our first time doing these locations. And if there's a large objection in the neighborhood, we tend to not want to be in that neighborhood. The issue is that we don't set, as you know, we don't set the zoning. The towns set the zoning. So the towns tell businesses like us, here are the sections that we want you in. We then have to comply with the zoning regulations, find an available space that doesn't conflict with the zoning bylaws, so we can't be within, whatever the radius is. Every town's a little bit different as to schools and daycare. So finding those spots are very difficult. And so a lot of times it's tough to sit up here and explain to abutters, well, the town is the one who wants us in that, in that location.
I'll speak on that point, only because I was on the board when we did pick this location. And we had all kinds of parameters we had to do it. There was 500 feet from this, 300, had to be B1 or B2 zoning. And when we did it around, only 2 or 3 places in the whole town popped up, and this one popped up right away. I said, whoa, there it is. But if we were also told that we had to have reasonable controls on where they could be, and if we didn't have reasonable controls, our bylaw would be legal and they could go anywhere. So,
That's true.
so what we had to do is a state law that they're legal, we had to find some place where they can go and have reasonable controls, and we did that, and not planning these folks or anything, but just the siting of, and this building was one of the few that popped up when we did it. So it is the town, it is the previous bylaw that we passed with all kinds of setbacks and everything, has nothing to do with your choice. We identified, how many years ago? Well, quite a few years ago, that this is where it's gonna go. So that's, for those who are wondering why it's here, that's why it's here.
Thank
Seems
you.
like a good location.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's,
It's also the highest traffic count we have in our town. If you do the traffic counts on the roads, it's a busy spot. But it's set back well, it's, that's what retail, you need the traffic, that's what it's all about. Whether it's your business or somebody else, it's a retail business. Do you have something, Bob?
Yeah, I find it a little ironic that we actually have medical marijuana when recreational is available, But anyways, will you be selling paraphernalia there as well?
So as far as what we're going to sell, do you want to talk about what's typically found in Ben? So Ben is our assistant cultivation director.
I'm Ben Handwerger. So typically, what will be found in the dispensary is a first-time user's guide, an aid to whether it be a simple rolling paper, a simple pipe. There won't be a full-scale paraphernalia shop within, just to be able to provide the basics and education and first-time user kind of ease and guidance.
And will it just be marijuana plant leaves, or will there be extracts? Is that part of the distribution as well?
Yep, so it'll be full scale, everything from the flower that you see in its bud form to extracts, vape pens, and edibles.
Edibles.
Again, under very heavy regulation as to how everything's labeled and marketed and done very well and above board.
Okay, thank you.
Wait a second. Pat, do you have anything?
Oh, I do, yeah.
No, go ahead. You went first.
I've had a chance to quickly read this letter from the condo association attorneys, and I'm not sure whether you've reached out, whether you've reached out to them yet or not, but condo association rules can be very stringent. I know that. But it appears to me that some of the things that they're objecting to probably already took place. You said there was a drive-through there with a bank. So that was something that was built. They must have gotten permissions.
There's so what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to get down into the weeds of the condo docs, because that's something we certainly have to work out with the association. This is a challenging, I don't want to characterize the association as a whole as challenging, but it's a challenging site because a lot of the condo owners aren't there. It's vacant, and the building, it's a mess, right? The whole back area is a mess, and our view is that we're going to make it into a much nicer location. If we're relying on the owner of the property, the condos that we're buying, to help facilitate a transition, if that doesn't work, we'll move on from the site. I mean, this has to work for everybody that's there. I think it can. As to your point about the parking spaces, there was a drive-through there, and there's actually an easement in the condo association documents for the exclusive use of this unit for a drive-through. The question as to whether that drive-through would encompass all of those spaces, maybe, maybe not. but I think that's something that we can work out when we get into when we talk to the condo. We were just emailed on Friday, that same letter that you were emailed, or maybe Thursday night, I think I received it. I corresponded with Attorney Brady with an email back and forth on Friday, and I would like to meet, and our team would like to meet with the owners that are, upset or in opposition to this, because obviously the person we're buying from owns over 40% of the units there, and we're buying about 20% from him. And so he's one of the larger stakeholders in the condominium complex. So the hope would be that we would be able to work out any issues the association has. But obviously, your board, in the special permit process, you're going to put conditions. If we can't meet those conditions because of an argument with the condo association, then we wouldn't be able to use the site. I mean, that's, the unfortunate aspect of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Charlotte, you had another one?
I do. I'm sort of disturbed that we can't see what it would look like, in your view, were your plans to come to fruition, what it would appear to be. Paul's experience with a medical marijuana dispensary, I guess, was very positive. Mine wasn't. It wasn't in this state. It was in California because of a family member, and it was really a distressing place. It was in a dingy strip mall. It clearly was run down on the outside. It was really run down on the inside. It was spooky, and it certainly would not add to the character of the town. And of course, that's our responsibility, is maintaining and enhancing the character of the town. So not being able to see what you're envisioning is concerning. There would have to be some kind of condition around that were this to move forward without further information. But if you could talk about what you see in your mind's eye as far as fix-ups, I know the inside isn't our business, but inside and out to create an atmosphere for that enterprise.
So there's a lot there. The first thing I would say is we don't expect a decision tonight. We expect a continuance. I can get you renderings for the next meeting. That's not an
That's what we're looking for. That's
No
what you
problem.
want.
First, that's easy. Second thing is, I'll get you pictures of our dispensary that we're building in Millbury. Anybody, I know it's a little bit of a trip, but anybody here is welcome to do a site visit to any of our other dispensaries. The one in Millbury, which is nearly complete. I will tell you that our all-in cost for that dispensary, not including land value, is going to be over $2.5 million. We're not constrained by budget. It's going to look nice. The cabinets alone are $300,000 that are going to go into it. As far as the exterior of what we're building right now in Millbury, it can't bear much of a resemblance to what's there because as there are condo association documents, and we can't go and do a whole different facade, right? It's one building, it has to match. So as far as what's there, we would take what's there. We would clearly paint, reside if that needed to be done, make it look nicer on the outside. There's not going to be enormous changes to the outside, but it's going to look nice, unlike it does right now. But we can get you renderings, no problem.
Thank you.
Sure.
Quick question. In the letter, it states that the condo association has control over vegetation, trees, whatever, and you mentioned taking those down so that nothing is, you mentioned hiding.
So, in conversations with town planner, I don't think there's any large mature trees that are going to have to come down. I think what would have to come down, number one, is within this board's discretion, right? You're going to tell us, here's how we interpret the bylaw, here's what we think clear space means. What we're talking about taking down is overgrown scrub, brush, briars, prickers, weeds, just junk. Nothing that's ornamental, nothing that is, nothing's been touched back there in years. You can't even walk around behind the building. It's a mess. So it's more cleaning up the vegetation that's there. It's not like there's a mature row of arborvitae that's there that we're going to take down. As an aside, I'd recommend maybe changing the bylaws a bit to make it so that the place could be a little more aesthetically pleasing. That's actually what you have in the town here. It's not necessarily paralleling the state. But we'll do we'll do our best to comply with what the town wants to be complied with, and also whatever we do, we would approach the association, and it would be at our own expense. It would make the area look nicer, and if they don't want their weeds cut down, we'll figure something out.
Right, because you have those two entities. I mean, one you have to get through the condo association, which probably supersedes the town, because if there's a condo association, they want those disgusting weeds, they may have more control over that than we do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't think that the weeds are gonna be the issue with the condo
Well, it isn't just the
association.
weeds, it's
Understood.
the weeds and the dock,
There's no dock on here. I don't know what they were talking about for a dock.
there's no loading docks?
No, there's no loading dock, nope. There's we have to make an accessible entrance in the front. There is an entrance in the back that's so overgrown, you don't know that it's there, but we would clean that entrance up and there'd be a stoop for employees. If that's a problem, we could, I don't think code-wise we would need it there. We would have an engineer if we didn't want that rear entrance, but the rear entrance is there. There's nothing, no loading dock. Deliveries will be through the front. There's a security vestibule in the front. All deliveries would go in and out of the front because that's where the security will be posted. I mean, from when again, I didn't want it, you're right, we have to work with the condo association, no question. Whether one supersedes the other, it's arguable because you could give us a permit and then we could argue with the condo association about what we feel are our rights and try and work through it with them. And if we can't comply with what your requirements are, then we can't open. So whether one supersedes the other, I don't know, but both have to work in order for us to open. That's clear.
Well, because the law requires the clearing and whatnot, I think you actually should give us a landscape plan. So we can see it in color. You know, we like to look at it to get an idea what it's gonna be, but you're probably gonna need that to talk with your neighbors anyway. I'd like to keep going, if you don't mind. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to talk about this? We'll see you again. We've given you a lot of time. We'll just gotta keep the ball rolling here.
Yes, my name is Patrick Brady. I'm an attorney and I represent the condominium trust. And I want to clear up a few things here tonight. The condominium rules do supersede. They can be more restrictive than the town. First of all, it is a condominium. It's not a freestanding piece of property, okay? A unit owner owns their unit. In this particular condominium, they own from the studs in. They do not own the siding. They do not own the roof. They do not own the parking. They don't control any of that. That is controlled by the association. So to clear up a few things, first of all, about the parking. There is an easement on record where a prior bank had a drive-through, if I may. These are the recorded plans.
I'll wait till I get back to the microphone.
That'd be good.
I think I've made enough. If I haven't, I will apologize.
Thank you.
Okay, as you can see, where the easement is, there's a small easement in the front for a mail slot, and there's a small easement in the back, but it's surely not a parking lot. Now, no unit owner has the right to an exclusive use of parking spaces. The only way that can be done is through a grant of easement, and whether that needs just the board approval or if it needs an amendment to the documents depends on other factors. As for the exterior of the building, this master deed has what they call an architectural integrity clause. An architectural integrity clause, the board controls what the outside looks like. It includes, even if the unit owner owns the windows, and they do own the windows in this case, the style of windows, the color, everything is up to the board. In fact, there's a recent appeals court case on that exact matter. So the resident, the owner of the property, does not have control of the color, the design, or anything else in the common areas. They have no right to put lights out there, no right to put surveillance cameras. They have no right to do any landscaping without prior approval of the board. And at this time here, this board does not approve any of these. Any additions to the common area, there is there's no loading dock, but it does say proposed landing at rear exit door. I'm not sure there's a door there. It doesn't appear on the plans. So if they want to install a door, again, that's a change in the exterior of the building, requires the trustees' votes. So I wanted to clear those up for this board. This is a condominium. This is not a piece of property that is owned by a single entity. In fact, there are 18 units in here. And that's the problem you have here. And the board's opinion and some of the unit owners' opinion, this is not the right place for this. All right. But that is up to you to grant a permit. But the permit will not be controlled for the common area, for the building exterior, or for the parking. The unit owner inside can control what they do, but not the exterior of the building and how things are used. Again, it's confusing to me if they assume these 15 spaces are going to be for them exclusively. I haven't heard that. In my mind, there's a lot of questions here. If they plan to do things on the outside, they may plan, but they have no right to do it. And that's what it appears to me we're addressing this as they own the entire building and they control the building. They don't. And so I would keep that in mind for this board. If they want to seek approval from the board, from the condominium board and the unit owners, that's a different story.
I would like to just settle things a little bit here. It sounds like they got a lot of work to do with you. We're gonna wanna see what we talked about on the outside, and they've gotta work with you. If you're saying that you have control on the outside and the landscaping, we gotta wait till you figure that out.
You can approve anything you want, but the condominium board can say no.
Right. We don't wanna get into that situation. We would actually like to see, we don't wanna have a public argument about two entities. You guys should solve that first, but we would like, what we were telling them, we would like to see a landscaping plan and what the outside of the building's gonna look like, and it sounds like they gotta work with you first before they even come here.
They sure do.
So is there any other issues you wanna bring up?
Well, again, I'm not sure what they plan for these 15 spaces. Are these limited common area? Again,
That again is your
Yeah.
again, between the parties, not,
well, I think this board should know, are these going to be for only are this going to be for the entire property? I think that's important for you as a board to know. Because if they have 100, they're estimating 100 per day, okay? How many spaces are there? Are they going to take them all up? There are a bunch of other businesses in here, and there will be more businesses in here.
okay.
Again, this is different than a person
Right.
owning a piece of land and
But
fee
I
simple.
want to separate, there's issues that you guys need to work out before you come back, and parking's one of them, landscaping's one of them, and the condition of the building. If the building's in terrible shape,
It sure is.
and
I
you're
couldn't
saying
agree
your
with you
group's
more.
responsible for that, and the only one's responsible for that, we would like to see a nice, clean building. But I think you first have to get together and work out these details, if they can be.
Fine.
But a lot of this isn't our job here.
Right.
Right.
I agree
Get
with
to
you.
work. Okay, anything else?
Well, that kind of covers it all. I hope we've made our
Okay.
stand and the stand of the condominium trust very clear.
Is it okay to move on? Anybody else from the, okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grant Walker, 71 Philadelphia Street. I am not an abutter. I may be considered a neighbor. I live on a street off Mara Vista Avenue, not too far away. I consider it a walk away, but I'm only here as a citizen, and I hope that the condominium association and the applicant for this particular facility will speak to energy efficiency and renewable energy insofar as they are doing some renovation of this building. Thank you very much. I hope they will speak to those things in subsequent hearings.
thank you. Anybody else? So we'll move along.
Oh,
Tom?
we do have a letter, if I may.
Okay.
For the record. Planning Board, Selectmen's Meeting Room, 59 Townhouse Square, RE Special Permit Application for Medical Marijuana Dispensary at 31 T-Ticket Highway, Falmouth, Mass. Dear members of the Planning Board, We are writing as owners and managers of the Admiralty Inn and Suites located on T-Ticket Highway in Falmouth, directly abutting the property proposed for a medical marijuana dispensary on T-Ticket Highway Route 28. We are respectfully writing the board because of our concerns about the proposed dispensary and its potential harmful effects upon hotel business. We have the following concerns about the proposed use. If permitted by the town, the dispensary will result in a significant increase in traffic over the property, property's former use as a real estate office. We operate a family-oriented vacation hotel and are greatly concerned that children may be attracted to this dispensary. We are concerned about our hotel's reputation and the reputation of other businesses on Main Street in the town. We are concerned that the hotel may experience a loss in business as our clientele may avoid the hotel if a dispensary is allowed to operate next door to our property. While we recognize the need and support the operation of medical marijuana dispensaries, we believe the property at 331 T-Ticket Highway is an inappropriate location for such a business. Such dispensaries should not be located in areas where children and families are present in large numbers on vacation. We note that in some other towns on Cape Cod, medical marijuana dispensaries are permitted by zoning only in industrial zones, not in business districts popular with tourists and children. Therefore, as owners and managers of the Admiralty Inn and Suites, we request that the planning board deny issuance of the special permit to Nature's Remedy for a medical marijuana dispensary at 331 T-Ticket Highway in downtown Falmouth. We suggest that a more appropriate location be found for this type of business away from the business district. We kindly thank the board for their consideration of this matter. Yours very truly, Maya Patel for Sai Vani Corporation doing business at Admiralty Inn and Suites.
I just want to point out, when we set this up, we made a requirement that could only go in the business districts. So that argument should have come up a long time ago.
Seeing as most of the industrial land is residential.
Yeah, so those points, I understand the point of view, but they should have been brought up when we decided where these things were gonna go. This is one of the few places in town where it actually fit the things we all thought were good at that time. So, that's gonna be, they'd have to change, not this application, they'd have to change the bylaw. That they should be going in another direction. Anybody else? Can we move on tonight to the next agenda? Invite these,
Absolutely.
when's the next time these folks will be back?
Well, I guess that's a question for council. What do you think your time frame is on meeting with the condo association and, you know, sort of, if you would, to the mic? So what continuation date are we looking toward?
How often do you usually meet? Every 2 weeks or every month?
Second and fourth Tuesdays.
Second and fourth Tuesday. What would, I think we would probably use a month. If we could do a month from now, give us a little bit of time to try and work through some of the issues. That would be helpful.
You got a date there, Tom?
I will in a second. March is easy to do because it's exactly the same as February, but I'm not smart enough to know the dates in April. So, April, our second Tuesday is the 8th, just the day before town meeting, I believe. Or is that the day we start town meeting?
I think,
Pardon me, that's Monday, sorry, that's the 9th. That is town meeting.
right.
So we would be looking at probably April 23rd.
That's fine. I'd request a continuance till April 23rd.
All set?
Yep.
Very good.
And we'll have those items that you requested in the meantime, so long as we can work that out.
So we'll
Thank you.
continue till
Thank you for your
April
time.
23rd.
Okay. Now we're getting back to our regular agenda, is that correct?
So we move to go back to the order of the regular agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, back to public hearings. Petitioner's article for Springtown meeting. I already introduced this once, literally 240-23 and 240-38 accessory apartments.
Yeah, except it's,
It's three,
Other than that,
items
they're
1, 2, and
three.
3, right? So,
and Article 1 doesn't have to do, well, it
Article 1, delete the word enhance. Now, I want to state, Jerry, we've had a lot of testimony on this before. I think we gave you a half hour. Do you have anything new to bring up on this issue?
Of course,
Please be brief.
I will be. Taking your advice, the town planner's advice, I did seek out advice from the town moderator to if changing the wording fit within the scope of the article, and whether I could do that on town meeting full floor as an introductory when I put it on the floor. He said yes.
Okay.
And he had also told me, and I think Tom might, the planner probably advised you, that you could also approve this article with this language. Oh, wait a minute, I have the wrong slide. I am sorry. Well, I'll go from, I think Tom has it, I don't know what
I
happened.
believe it's on the screen, on the desktop. Did you put that in as on a flash drive here?
No, I thought I sent it to you. Well, I'll keep on talking to speed this
But
along.
remember, you need to be in the mic. They can't hand you it. Oh.
Okay. In addition to that, I did meet with the Board of Health last night to discuss their view of what would eliminating the word enhance mean. As you may remember, there was some concern that if you eliminated the term enhanced, because it says nitrogen removal system, it would also, we don't need that one. This is the correct language. It may send some confusion. They agreed that an on-site system removes a certain percent of nitrogen. So the language I had originally up there was acceptable. But they also agreed that this language may be clearer for town meeting because it leaves no doubt what I'm proposing, on-site septic system approved by the Board of Health, okay? You could say nitrogen is immaterial for this article. They did not endorse the article one way or the other. We had a robust discussion on terminology and use. It was interesting that they sort of agreed with the discussion the town meeting didn't pick up on. We have no definition of enhance. They actually have it in a current proposed enforcement policy, which I think was part of last town meeting's discussion. So I think this is it. Yeah, you could approve the original language, or if you so inclined to improve something, I would like you to improve this. It'd be easier than having you approve something than me come and say, well, Mr. Moderator, I'm going to propose this language.
Okay, I think we've heard a lot.
Yes, okay. I wanted to bring any questions.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I would like,
Oh, wait,
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were here for something else. No.
Virginia Valiero, Precinct 5. I am totally opposed to what was presented here. The clear intent is to remove the nitrogen removal intent that was included with all of the discussions we had with the accessory apartments all the way back to the beginning. So the Water Quality Management Committee supported the planning board in its revision of the accessory bylaw because you specifically had this stipulation in there. And I had a number of conversations with members of the board, and I'm sure you remember. So this just will not work. And all you have now is a septic system. It must have nitrogen removal if it's in a coastal pond area. So I would move indefinite postponement. That is my recommendation for this article.
You don't get to move it, though.
No, I would recommend. You're right. You're right. I would recommend.
Pat gets to move it. Patricia.
I move indefinite postponement on this proposed article on the grounds that they're looking for an additional bedroom, so they should expect to give something, on the grounds that we are already required by the state to remove nitrogen to certain levels on our poor embayments, poor water quality embayments, and this would allow another drip. And also, even more because the temporary working group for the accessory apartments discussed this at length and decided to leave the language as is. So on those three bases, I move indefinite postponement.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, the next is minimum lot size. Article 22, minimum lot size, 7,000 feet. You may.
This is not my presentation, so I
Right.
don't want to give the impression I'm advocating for anything. So, Mr. Banner, who who proposed this, is out of town and asked for a continuance till the 26th, in which I informed him that we'll be at print and we'll be out, done with the hearing. So he had submitted his requested change to the bylaw in the presentation that he's put together here. Essentially, I'm not going to go through all this, but originally his proposal was under 7,000 square feet in all areas. And so his amended bylaw would be for 7,500 square feet, except when both the principal dwelling and the accessory apartment are connected to the municipal sewer system. The lot size should be no less than 7,000 square feet. And that is the gist of his proposed amendment.
That's his whole presentation right there. We've heard them all before. We
Yeah.
discussed
There-
this
there's-
at length.
there-
We've been over and over and over
So
this,
they
right?
did combine, they did get together and combine.
Well, actually, they have not, apparently. There
But
hasn't been.
this is the one that's in front of us right now.
So that's the big finish. So he's proposing that the lot size would be no less than 7,500 square feet, except for both the principal dwelling and the accessory apartment are connected to the municipal sewer system.
Period, that's it.
And the lot size would be no less than 7,000 square feet.
Any comments from anybody? Charlotte first, and then we'll go for the outside and then in.
Yeah, the last time we
Charlotte,
talked-
I said Charlotte.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Paul. Since we discussed this last time, it occurred to me that each time we add to the number of lots that can have an accessory apartment, as this will do when we discuss them along Mara Vista, we realize that it will include other areas of town with a similar history of tiny lots. Each time we do that, we are using up sort of a budget that we have before we have used our capacity at the sewer system and the discharge. So thinking about that, I was aware, I didn't know what that budget is. How many bedrooms, in effect, can we add before we've used it up? So I went down to see Tom, and I don't believe he could possibly have had time to have gotten an answer yet.
You are correct.
Right. But we will have one, so that each time we make a decision, if we decide to go forward with this, we would know what we've done to other projects we might have in mind for the town may be ruled out because we've used up as many bedrooms as we can. For example, when we approved having the hotel down there at, across from Gus Canty, we've added a bunch of bedrooms. When we plan to put in multifamily housing along Davis Straits, we know that we want to be adding a lot of new bedrooms, quite a few. We may not have enough bedrooms left to add if we've already used them. Now, a bedroom's a bedroom. It's provided housing for somebody. We know because of these, or we assume, because of the size of these accessory apartments along Mara Vista or other tiny lots, they're likely to be at a very affordable rent, so that we have impacted the housing supply, affordable housing supply, even though it doesn't count toward our, toward the 40B count. We've at least done something good for the town. So you can't really balance one bedroom against another. But I feel that we should know what we're doing when we do this. What kind of number do we have to kind of use And how are we going to spend them? It should be a
Not every,
thoughtful
but
decision.
I think it's gonna be hard. We have to do it on an individual basis because not every application's gonna be adding a bedroom. It's really the use that we're talking about, not adding a bedroom. So some may even be reducing the bedrooms in order to do it because they'll be taking a four-bedroom house, making it a three and putting the kitchen in one room and the bedroom in the other. So we
Or
have
at
to
least
do
leaving
that.
the number of bedrooms the same. You're right. You have,
Right.
you,
And we've
once you
capped it at no
know-
more than 4 bedrooms anyway. And I think at 110 gallons of additional flow, if they put in another, if they did add a bedroom, it's a really small number.
Well, as Pat said, drip, drip, drip.
Right.
I just think that
But
we, thank
We
you,
knew
Pat.
that, though, when we passed the bylaw, and we decided we put these other guidelines in because we wanted to get the accessory apartments.
I understand that, and
And
I'm
we-
not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is I think that our decision would be a more knowledgeable decision if we could base it on some data. Now, Tom made a real effort to pull the data together, and I tried to write it all down and later couldn't really read my own handwriting well enough, but it appeared to be adding about 111 possibilities, because they have to be owner-occupied, a lot of limits on it. So it's not a huge number. It's not enough to lead us to turn this down. But it's a number that subtracts from other possibilities. My point is, we ought to know that number and keep track of it. At some point, the town is going to have to decide to increase the capacity. And we ought to be among the boards that are providing them the information when you get closer and closer and closer to that time. I just think that we should know. So it's not an argument against this. It's just to say, our information now really is not what it should be as we consider this.
Okay? Anybody else?
Yeah.
Nope, Paul, sorry, go, then we'll come back.
Okay.
He did, I jumped over him, sorry, go ahead.
You know, last time we discussed this, I asked how we came up with the 7,500. It's my understanding in the committee, there's a strong argument for 10,000. And it was finally, after a lot of discussion, reduced to 7,500. And I don't see the argument for going down to 7,000. Now, Mr. Banner has an excellent case where he wants to put a accessory apartment and he has 7,200 square feet. But we can't change a bylaw for one individual. So I would not be in favor of reducing it below 7,500 because that's a negotiated number that was extremely thought out and worked on by a lot of different people. And to just toss that out, I don't think is the way to go. So I would not be in favor of reducing the lot size.
When we did the bylaw, I fought real hard not to put the cap on the square footage because to try to if you're not on the sewer, to try to fit both a reserve and a septic system on a small lot with the parking and everything, it just can't be done. And by putting the cap on it, I specifically wanted to know how many places on Mara Vista would be limiting it to, because I knew that area was gonna be on the sewer, and that's why, when the bylaw passed, there wasn't a cap on it. But when we did this change, it was a negotiated number, 7,500, and I think it eliminated, we did have a count, Tom. Do you recall how many 7,200 square foot lots are in Mara Vista? There was a significant number.
I'm working from memory here, and I can, excuse myself to get the number, but we looked at two universes of numbers. One was all the residents, all the dwellings, whether they're owner occupied or not, that might be impacted by the smaller size. And I want to say that was about 350. Of those units that are owner occupied currently, I think it was about 119. But it doesn't take much to make an owner-occupied, create an owner-occupied unit. You move to town. So that was, well, currently under the owner-occupied, it's about 119. The universe of all those units, if everyone who had a seasonal unit moved to town, it would be about 350.
As I recall, Mr. Bannett's unit's a one-bedroom, 400 square feet. It seems to be perfect, exactly what we were trying to get to do in the bylaw, and I would really be concerned that we're eliminating the chance for so many places with this. So I'm very much in favor of the bylaw. Pat, do you have anything to say?
I think there's gonna be something else controlling it too. It's going to be, if you have a 7,000 square foot lot, you still have to have appropriate landscaping and parking. And on a 7,000 square foot lot, that is going to be extremely difficult for our board to find and approve of.
Well, that's why in his plan, he's putting a small garage and putting the apartment on the second floor. He's already got his parking there, you know, he's created a parking spot by putting in the garage.
But that's my point, though. We can say, no.
Well, I
You
thought his
might be on
plan,
the sewer, but it doesn't fit.
well, if it doesn't fit, we still can. I think
Yeah.
but I think his plan
It did.
fits
It was
perfectly.
fine.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I always felt that the constraints were gonna be self-eliminating, as it was. And I just think that we're kind of discriminating against people with smaller lots. So if you own a 40,000 square foot lot, you can put a 20 by 40 accessory apartment on your property. Whereas somebody who doesn't own that size lot is gonna not have the opportunity to do that. And we're looking at an area of town that has all the little small houses that were pretty much the starter houses for a lot of people. And they want to stay there, and like this applicant has a little garage, a little 400 square foot apartment above it, and that's kind of what we were envisioning
Right.
all along, was people converting garages.
Right. And this isn't a decision for one person, that's the point I was trying to
Right.
make. This is in line with the original bylaw that we passed, and the modification is what, in the last town meeting, is what created this issue. Because he would have passed immediately, he missed it by days.
By day.
Do you want to recognize Jerry?
Jerry, what do you got for us? Been sitting here, I might as well,
Well, there might be another question, opinion. Just want to remind folks, I think the drip by drip is sort of an over-exaggeration. We have a flow-neutral bylaw. We have professionals in town that advise that have to approve any tie-in and have to have the selectmen if it exceeds it. This board will know what's happening. This board could obviously ask for that information when they do site plan review. So I think the drip by drip is a little bit unfair. I also think you could say, well, that's fine for the sewer system. But for the rest of the town, we have the Water Quality Committee working on advanced treatment systems, and eventually those areas, some of them will be controlled. If you want anything in here, and maybe up to 4 bedrooms, I don't know, you have to put an IA system. So it will not be drip by drip. I ask you to respect and look at the other professionals that look at these decisions and your own site plan review when it comes in front of you. Thank you.
okay.
That's why we always defer to the
And
Board of
this,
Health.
I know, we always deferred, and that's why I tried not to bring in comments at the end, because it brings in a rebuttal, and I get, well, because we've already covered all this, okay? But now, Virginia, would you come up? But I was gonna say to myself, why don't do it? We'll just keep going. I don't wanna have a debate on this.
I
I think we've heard everything we need to hear, in my opinion.
Okay, but you did leave the hearing open, so there is time for input.
Our mistake.
No, because,
Go.
I know you are. Okay, so I thank Mr. Dyer for his comments, because the 7,500 was a compromise. And on town meeting floor in last November, you, Mr. Chairman, were asked how was the 75 agreed at? And you said to the town meeting, it's a compromise. So
It was a compromise.
okay, and so we should have stayed there. If the Mara Vista lots are all 7,200, why are we dropping this to 7,000? I just want to put that piece out there. I completely agree with Mrs. Kerfoot that it is drip by drip. And you're not just talking about Mara Vista now. As we look at the other areas of town that have to be sewered, Seacoast Shores, Shorewood Avenue, Perch Pond, you know, this isn't just an impact on Mara Vista, it's the rest of the town, and so I don't think it's in the best interests of the town.
Do I hear a motion?
I'm going to move that we indefinitely postpone this. You can vote me down. If there's no
Well,
second,
I just want to see if there's a second. I
I'll
don't,
second it for discussion.
okay, I was trying to move this along.
I know, but
I think we've discussed this quite a lot. I think it's a shame if we, and I thought from the very beginning that these ones in Mara Vista, that 7,200, they were particularly the center of town, near the village, walk to places, that's everything that the bylaw had in mind when we passed it the first time.
And had the review committee known that these lots were 7,200 square feet, I think that would have been the number.
I mean, I think what's interesting is this wouldn't have come up had it not been for Mr. Banner. And I think it would have just gone through town meeting at 7,500, and that would have been it. And then we had this gentleman who,
Came up with what I thought was a perfect one,
exactly.
and we can't do it.
But then what happens when somebody comes in that has 7,105, 71.5? And then what do you say?
We're not gonna change again if
No, okay. They have 69,
they're out of luck.
whatever. Right, but Mr. Banner fell into that, and I think this whole discussion has come about because of Mr. Banner. And is that, to me, it feels a little bit like spot zoning.
Well, he highlighted an area that we were looking at.
Oh, I know,
and-
I understand. And actually,
And the original bylaw didn't have any lot
Right.
limit, so.
I disagree. I knew about, this was discussed when we developed the accessory apartment bylaw, this exact same issue. And it was we acquiesced to the working group for this problem, just to move the subject along, and we probably should have come up, no, how about 7,200, and maybe we wouldn't have got there.
Right.
But,
But these are all maybes.
yeah,
What's in front of us is the 7,000. If we go with indefinite postponement right now, it can come back at 7,200 and we can reconsider the question then, because that might be a more reasonable thing, and it might actually be acceptable to the people who made the compromise, so that those boards and people who are party to the compromise that we recommended to town meeting and they passed would also support 7,200, maybe. It's not in front of us now.
Tom, can we change this language now? Can we go 7,200?
No.
I'd like to ask Tom's opinion.
The petitioned article is the petitioned article.
Okay, we can't change his
The
petition.
planning board can make a recommendation that says, we would recommend this petition article if it was 10,000 square feet, if it was 7,000 square feet. So I think in your recommendation, you can change that number. And if I'm wrong, then I will be wrong. But as I understand it, it is the planning board's recommendation that we're voting on. His article is in the warrant at 7,000 square feet. So what we will be submitting is the planning board's recommendation, indefinite postponement, or we recommend approval if, pick a number.
If we were to do that, it would still be open to town meeting to approve the 7,000.
It always is.
It could be amended on town meeting floor either way.
Yes, it can, but if we give it now an indefinite postponement, at least we've done what we could, so that town meeting can't vote for knows not to vote for the 7,000. But if we recommend, this would be okay if only it were 72, then they've got 72, they've got the choice there.
Jim, I hate amendments on town meeting floor. I hate changes on town meeting floor. I think it makes boards look less than, what we want to promote ourselves as being. And I agree with Pat. If we postpone this, it's not coming then on the heels of a very disappointed town meeting in the way the board presented. I just think we'd be better off doing that and coming back in the fall. And everyone being on the same page, if that's
Yeah.
ever possible.
And also getting the answer to Charlotte's question as to how many potentials there are.
Right, just know some more data and be able to go with the united front with the other boards would be so much
Absolutely.
better.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. We're gonna move this. All in favor?
What's
Aye.
what's the motion?
Indefinite postponement.
Happy.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
1. Okay,
That's 4 to 1.
have to come back next year.
I like town meeting to have the opportunity.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
all right.
The vote was 5 to 1. 5 to 1.
5 to 1, sorry.
Amended at town meeting, I don't think that's.
I just went along with, I just went along with everybody else. I'm in favor
I'm
of
all
it.
willing to bring it back
Yeah.
up again.
Well,
and
we'll
have-
just do it
have a
next year.
stronger look at it.
Hey, we get 6 months. Okay, what's next?
Well, while the petitioner is not here, the next article is for 7,000 square feet on the sewer, which you could have a robust discussion about.
I think we can forget about
We
that
can
right
table
now.
that.
Can, a motion here?
I
So
move
that's Article
indefinite
23.
postponement.
On Article.
Do I have a
20.
second? We're moving a
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Opposed.
okay, you should.
So that's Article 23.
As chairman, I gotta go along. I don't wanna be in a fight
Where are we now?
over something like this.
Under
Can really save it.
petitioner's
Yeah.
articles.
Save it for
Okay.
something bigger.
25.
Everything should be
Article
unanimous.
25.
I usually,
Okay, are we, now we're on to public discussion, public petitioners article, Springtown meeting, Article 25.
Yes, we had previously closed the hearing for Article 25, but the board had not rendered a
We
recommendation.
didn't, okay. So do we have a recommendation?
I move that we approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Applicant William Rogers, site plan
We
application.
already did that.
Well, we did that, okay.
So we're flipping the page and we're at Jason Sullivan.
Jason Sullivan, site plan application for accessory apartment in the basement located at 64 Fresh Pond Road.
Right, and for this application, the board has closed the hearing. We have a draft decision and a motion in your gray folder, the last one in your book.
Okay.
Okay, you're all keyed up to ready to read there, Bob?
Yep. I'm all
Please take
queued
it
up.
away.
Okay, draft March 5th, 2019. Motion that the planning board vote to approve the application of Jason Sullivan under Article 39, site plan review of the zoning bylaw for a plan entitled Site Plan Prepared for Michael Corritanto of number 54 Fresh Pond Road, prepared by J. Elandis Colley, P.E., dated May 15th, 2017. Scale 1 inch equals 30 feet, 1 sheet, along with floor plans drawn by Jason Sullivan, construction 2 sheets, and landscape and drainage drawings by hand 2 sheets prepared by applicant with the following findings and conditions. Findings, the applicant is seeking to construct an accessory apartment within the basement of a primary single-family residence with associated drainage, landscaping, and parking. Subject parcel is located in agricultural AGA A zoning district located at 64 Fresh Pond Road, map number 2902020000. The lot size is 43,513 square feet. The residence contains 3 bedrooms. The applicant is proposing to add a 4th bedroom. The parcel is located in an MEP Wacoit Bay Coastal Pond District that does not exceed the 1 bedroom per 10,000 square foot of lot area that would require on-site septic with enhanced nitrogen removal. The proposed apartment will be 468 square feet, 18 by 26. The primary residence square footage is 1,196, according to drawings provided. First floor living space is 1,196 square feet, 46 by 26, resulting in a 39% relation to principal structure floor area ratio. The planning board's review does not include building code review, and the board defers to the building commission as to issues related to building code. The planning board would like to thank the applicant for revising plans and elevations based upon board review and comment. Findings pursuant to section 240.23I of the zoning bylaw. A, only 1 accessory apartment shall be allowed per lot, and the above referenced application and plans comply with this requirement. B, either the principal dwelling or accessory apartment must be owner-occupied for a period of 7 months in every calendar year, or owned by a nonprofit organization or government authority whose purpose is to provide affordable housing. The board will condition its decision accordingly. C, either the principal dwelling or accessory apartment may be rented, but not both during the 5 months the owner-occupant may be absent. Rental period shall be no less than 6 months, and weekly, monthly rentals, summer rentals so-called, are expressly prohibited. Neither the principal dwelling nor accessory apartment shall be used as commercial accommodations at any time. The board will condition its decision accordingly. D, the accessory apartment shall have no more than 2 bedrooms and a maximum of 800 square feet of floor area, or 40% of the floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. The above referenced plans comply with this requirement. E, the total number of bedrooms on the lot shall not exceed 4 when the lot contains less than 20,000 square feet. The lot contains 43,500 square feet of upland, therefore this requirement is not applicable. F, whether allowed as a matter of right or by special permit, accessory apartments located on lots subject to this provision, to the provisions of the Water Resource Protection or Coastal Pond Overlay Districts, total number of bedrooms shall not exceed 1 per 10,000 square feet of lot area, unless both the principal dwelling and accessory apartment are connected to the municipal sewer system or to an on-site septic system with enhanced nitrogen removal approved by the Board of Health. The property is located in the NEP Wacoit Bay Coastal Pond Overlay District, but meets the 4-bedroom, 40,000 square foot lot requirement. The applicant will need a larger septic system than the 3-bedroom system they currently have if the accessory apartment becomes the 4th bedroom. The applicant could keep the current system if one of the bedrooms in the primary residence is eliminated, thus keeping the net flow neutral. G, 4, design standards. Accessory apartments, whether a part of new construction, reconstruction, alteration, or change to a single-family residence or accessory structure attached thereto, shall maintain the following standards. A, the architectural effect as the result of the accessory apartment being constructed within the principal dwelling shall be that of a single-family residence compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The board finds the proposed accessory apartment meets the applicable design standards for a single-family residence. B, parking for the accessory apartment shall be provided in a manner that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed parking is sufficient for the site and comports with compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood. Conditions. 1, the plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the planning board to determine if a modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to section 240-183B of the zoning bylaw, no permit for full or partial occupancy shall be issued until the planning board is satisfied that the conditions of this approval and predecessor approvals have been met. 2, either the principal dwelling or accessory apartment must be owner occupied for a period of 7 months in every calendar year, or owned by a nonprofit organization or government authority whose purpose is to provide affordable housing. An affidavit shall be submitted annually to the building commissioner, signed by the property owner, attesting that the principal dwelling or accessory apartment has been owner occupied for a period of 7 months and not otherwise rented as set forth above. 3, either the principal dwelling or accessory apartment may be rented, but not both during the 5 months the owner occupant may be absent. Rental period shall be no less than 6 months, and weekly, monthly rentals, summer rentals, so-called, are expressly prohibited. Neither the principal dwelling nor accessory apartment shall be used as commercial accommodations at any time.
Second.
Any further discussion? We've just talked about this before. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay. Take over.
Oh, well, you gotta say you're
Okay, so I'm
recusing yourself.
recusing myself for the next hearing.
Okay, so the next hearing is applicant Woods Hole Partners LLC, site plan review to construct a 43-unit residential complex at the property located at 533 Woods Hole Road to consist of 39 market rate dwelling units in 5 buildings, 3 duplex buildings on 1 20-unit building and 1 13-unit building, and 4 affordable rental units in 2 duplex buildings, Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is a continuance. So, the reason for the continuance is that there was quite a long list of things that had to be taken care of. Most of them with engineering complaints. And Tom, do you have any report as to what's been done and what hasn't been done?
We did have a meeting with engineering staff, Falmouth engineering staff, as well as Woods Hole Partners engineering staff, to work through a number of the issues on stormwater, and they were putting those together. We had sort of engineers passing on their vacation schedules, so we found a window when their engineer was back before our engineer had left to review some of those stormwater issues. Many of which are in the midst of being resolved. Some of one of the probably more difficult things to do, because they don't necessarily have, they have control of their site to deal with those drainage issues. The site distance issue is one of those things that has been identified by the engineering department. through our regulations for curb cuts. We had a discussion with their engineers about that. That is a conversation they'll have to have with Mass Highway, because it's Mass Highway's road, about what we can do to mitigate the site distance issues, because they don't comport with our regulations. And there was also a discussion about the total number of floors in the business redevelopment district. You have received today, because as we received them, both an opinion from town council and from the building commissioner, and they don't necessarily agree. Under the email that I had sent following the ZBA meeting to Mr. Duffy, town council was asking for an opinion. I'm requesting interpretation on the building height in the business redevelopment zoning district. It's the considered opinion of the planning and zoning staff, the maximum building height in the business redevelopment district is 2.5 stories, and not to exceed 35 feet, with the top half story being 50% of the square footage of the floor below it. Attorneys for Woods Hole Partners have stated in staff meetings and at last night's ZBA meeting that the height in the business redevelopment district is 35 feet, and there is no stipulation to 2.5 floors. However, the Falmouth zoning bylaw 24070 maximum building height states such with exceptions in the agricultural district for agricultural uses, public use districts for permitted community service uses, and in the light industrial B and C use districts. There is no stated exemptions for the business redevelopment district. If you could please provide your written opinion to the planning and zoning staff, we will forward it to attorneys Ament and Clower for the planning board and zoning board's benefit. I won't go into reading the entire bylaw, which was attached to the memorandum. Mr. Duffy replied on March 11th, I concur with the opinion of the planning board staff. There is no exemption for 2.5 story limit in the business redevelopment in BRD, period. The zoning bylaw provides for specific exemptions in other districts, which means to me there is not one in the BRD by implication or otherwise. That is from town council. In an email I received today from Ament and Clower's office is a letter signed by Rod Palmer, our building commissioner, which says maximum building height in business redevelopment district. Dear Mr. Ament, you have inquired about the building heights allowed in the Falmouth Business Redevelopment District, Building Redevelopment District. Regarding building heights, we generally look at the zoning bylaw section 24070, which states the basic maximum building height for principal structures is 2.5 story, not to exceed 25 feet. However, the business redevelopment bylaw has its own set of dimension requirements, section 240-240H and subsection 240-240H5, which reads maximum building height 35 feet. The building height in the business redevelopment district is therefore not limited to 2.5 stories. The number of stories is not regulated in the business redevelopment district at all. The only applicable factor for determining allowable height in the business redevelopment district is a 35-foot measurement. The height to be measured as provided in the definition of building height in section 241.13 of the zoning bylaw. Bylaw section 240-240H5 is clear and unambiguous. It is one of several dimensional regulations applicable in the business redevelopment district that offers from dimensional requirements set forth in Article 14 of the zoning bylaw. The business redevelopment district has its own dimensional requirements. I believe these provisions, including section 240-240H5, are consistent with the purposes of the redevelopment district set forth in section 240-240A. So we have a difference of opinion with town council and the building commissioner. We also got an email late this afternoon, which I didn't get a chance to look at, from Mr. Clark, because I was waiting to get both Rod's and Frank's opinions to forward them to Clower. And then when I got this email from Kevin Clower with Rod's letter, I sort of had a pretty good idea what Rod's opinion was. But so that's where we're at. The building commissioner doesn't seem to think that there is a limitation on 2.5 stories, and town council seems to think that there is.
Well, as the board would know, we're not the permitting agency on this, that's the ZBA, so that would be up to them to determine. we were discussing it because it's all part of our site plan review in a way with the height of the building in relationship to the dome. That's how that even came up, so that I would suggest that we need to look at the bylaws in the future to see whether we agree with that interpretation, if something needs to be changed about the bylaws, so that this won't come up in the future. And the only way we have any effect is if we do a recommendation, which we do referrals to the ZBA. If we do a referral to the ZBA and say which way we want to come down on this, but we have nothing to say. Is there any dispute on that? Okay, that came up. And when I'm looking at the rest of this is a whole list. I believe you were all given that last time. So site distances are still open, and that has to have Mass Highway. Yes,
Were the applicants given the list also?
yes,
Yeah.
they were sent the list.
Yeah.
And Tom has indicated that engineering is working with their engineers on the issues of the drainage. Parking aisle, buildings F and G, Tom, are they working on that too?
I don't know, the applicant is here, I don't see their engineer here, but they can likely give us an update on where they're at with their plans.
Okay, do you have the list so that we can go through this and you can tell us where you are on all of these things? Thank you.
Dear Madam Chair, I've been thinking about my emails too much. Madam Chair, members of the board, for the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ament Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth. I'll do my best to speak to some of the plans. I believe that our engineering team has been meeting, well, I know they've been meeting with the town's engineering department. To my knowledge, the driveway entrance questions, the width of the entrance driveway is 20 feet on the easterly side of the site. That's the existing roadway that kind of runs past the dome. There's not much that can be done about that.
Can't do much about that,
No,
so I think
there's essentially nothing that
suggestion-
can be done about that.
Well, I think a suggestion came out of here that you look at making that one way, enter only,
So,
right there.
the concern with that is, to the extent that there's traffic generated by the dome, you don't want them driving through the rest of the residential site as much as possible, because it's an inconvenience for them and an inconvenience for the owners as well. One thought we had was that it could be made one way past the dome, so past the parking area, so there'd be anyone turning out of that way would only be coming from the dome. The owners of the condos would all be using the westerly exit. That would minimize the traffic there in a way.
So we're only gonna smash into the dome visitors then?
No one's smashing into anything, hopefully. But the concern, I think, is with the two-way traffic.
Yeah.
And if there essentially isn't any two-way traffic coming from the north, then it would minimize that potential issue.
Okay, so you've considered that, and this would be your answer to it.
We would be, if the board conditioned it on that, we would certainly do it.
And then we have the width of the parking aisles, buildings F and G.
That, I believe, has been addressed.
It has,
Yes.
okay. I'm gonna make note to that it's been addressed. And I'm assuming that anything that's been addressed will be on a revised site plan, so we can see that, okay. And then we know that the comments on the, Scott's newest commentary have been or are being handled. Okay, so we go under site plan review. The parking count. The spaces designated for the dome should be numbered on the cover sheet. Because right now you've got the number of parking spaces, but that does not, and is not separated to indicate the dome parking spaces. So that's being taken care of. Okay. Wondering, you have to have 5 bicycle spaces provided. Would you consider more as traffic mitigation or not? And the reason I'm asking this is because you've presented this as a plan where there are going to be people who are using alternative transportation, they're gonna be walking into town, we're right by the bicycle path, and I'm not even saying that these need to be outdoor, but they might be outdoor.
Sure.
They might be in the basement parking of the buildings.
We have no objection to adding more.
But I'm just
bicycle-
throwing
yeah.
this out
No,
because it's something that-
there's certainly no objection to that.
These are high-end, and they may have high-end bicycles that they don't want to let be outside. So, just a suggestion. You need to show the increased sidewalk width on the plan. But now that can't be shown on the plan until you have an agreement with,
I think we can show it on the plan.
you can, even with, whether you're not, you have an agreement with.
We would have to obtain approval to do it, but
Okay.
that's, we can certainly reflect the intent.
Okay, so fine, you will do that. What did you think about keeping and improving the western driveway pickup drop-off pad for passengers? You know, the sidewalk ends, and then there's this wide tar space.
I don't have a direct answer for that right now, and I don't want to pretend otherwise.
Okay, so,
I don't think there's any objection to it, but I don't know how much it's been vetted.
okay, so that still has to be. Then we were asking for a detailed landscaping plan for the site surrounding the dome. And you'll have to work with Mass DOT for that too, I think, because it's coming down into their land ownership. So there's a lot that has to do with Mass Highway. And that hasn't been furthered, is that correct? So we still need that.
I believe with the new plan set, you'll have a more detailed landscaping plan. Whether or not that landscaping plan includes the landscaping proposed for the hill, I don't know.
Okay. There was discussion about walking paths for the public and possible integration with the Hui property.
The integration with the Hui property is a long-term hope.
Okay,
but
long-term hope.
there is a 10-foot strip of property that runs between Hui and this parcel. So that would require cooperation by another property owner. And that would be, more as a potential down the road that they would see something maybe happening along with that. But the walking paths throughout the site, sidewalks and other walking paths, will be open to the public.
And I don't recall, were they shown on the site plan?
The sidewalks were. I'm not sure that there were additional walking paths outside of the sidewalk that were shown at this point.
Okay, and you are planning additional walking paths, or not?
There'll be, yes. I mean, there'll be walking paths where possible, certainly around the dome, other areas of the lot that would be conducive to it. Much of that, especially on the far northern side, is topographically limited.
Oh, yeah.
But in areas where it would make sense, they're certainly open to doing that.
Okay. So, design review. We have design of the affordable units and siting affordable units closer to the market units to keep lot coverage percent in line with covenant with Woods Hole community.
So, we did submit revised designs for the affordable units.
Okay.
But they are gonna remain in the same site. We are in compliance with the covenant restrictions. The restrictions set forth a 40% limitation on lot coverage by structures and parking, not structures, paving, and parking. So within the covenant's limitations, we are compliant, and we're certainly compliant with 41% of lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking, where 60% is allowed by right.
And I did take a look at the revised designs, and you are changing up building materials, and I don't know about coloring, whether that's gonna,
I think it's gonna be in line with the other units, gray and white.
oh, no, I'm not even talking about that, I'm just talking about, we talked about everything, all the buildings on the site. And they are much improved, I think. It's unfortunate that John Drewley isn't here, because he was the one who brought that up in particular. But it was to vary the color and material detail to make it less of a development look and more of like a neighborhood. And I'm not sure if there's any variation in the coloring, but there certainly is in the exterior details. What about the location of signage and the impact on site distances? Because that was not shown on the plan.
So we certainly wouldn't be placing any signage in a way that would restrain the site distances further than they are right now. We know that we have an issue with the site distance on the easterly driveway. So certainly nothing will be done that would complicate that any further. I think you'd see signage essentially where they're located today, but we'll make sure that they're located, or have been located. We'll make sure that they're located in a way that don't have any impact on site distances.
We'd like to have that shown on the plans, though. Are you planning on having
We certainly can.
a sign on both driveways in?
Yes.
but that does need to be located on the plan. And obviously, it can be changed in its location if that interferes with. The question is still open as to whether there's sufficient space between the dome and the proposed building E, and that's going to depend upon Mass Historic and the Historic Commission here in town.
So we did increase that setback from 18 feet to about 27 feet, and we will still be subject to a historical review from both, as you mentioned, the town and the state.
So this is still open as an issue.
I mean, the historical is, because we haven't
Right.
gone through that process yet. But I think that the planning board, site plan review could be conditioned upon approval from historic.
Yeah, we'd have to, yeah. And then the et cetera. Is the dome view shed appropriate based on review of Mass Historic and Falmouth Historical Commission? It might require some, so that would be a conditioning.
Sure, and as we noted at the last hearing, there's currently a 135-degree view shed, so to speak, from the dome. The greatest possible impact is theoretically 2 degrees, but the 2 degrees that is impacted is set 20 feet below the existing grade of the dome. So to the extent there's any impact from the new buildings, it's pretty limited in scope.
Okay, and then we've already taken up the question about the half stories.
And I did, as Mr. Bott mentioned, I did submit an email response this afternoon because I wanted to get something in ahead of the hearing.
We've got it in our packet.
And we can submit something a little more thorough if need be.
Okay, so this is what was still open at our prior meeting, that they had the list, and that's why we did not meet at the prior meeting and put it off till this time. Comments? First of all, did you all have a chance to go in and see?
I did.
Okay.
I did, and saw that, once again, you've tried very hard to do as we had asked and to meet what the abutters have wanted, and I thank you for that. Listening now, overall, I think that this project really is such a terrific improvement to that area, and as long as it is built as promised by the plans, we should approve it, the site plan tonight. I hope that we do, and I would like to move that we approve tonight.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve tonight, but we don't like to approve unless we have it spelled out in front of us as
We
a
put
motion.
the conditions on it, that obviously it has to be conditioned on Mass Historical and apparently on Mass Highway, working on the site distances. Did we hear any other conditions that would like to add?
We have to resolve the issue
Yeah.
between the town council and the building inspector.
No, we don't, because that's
No, we
just a
don't.
referral from us to the ZBA.
Right.
We don't have anything to do with
Isn't that a
determining that.
condition?
No.
it's
That
a
goes in our referral, so
Okay.
that's quite
Well,
separate.
we would be referring the 30-foot,
And we're
after all, this
looking at
board created the business
how the
redevelopment zone
buildings look.
with the 35 feet, and so we would be referring it to keep that in mind, that was our thought for business redevelopment, that it would be the 35 feet, if we need to put that in.
And we're looking at the design of the buildings, the adequacy of the parking, the flow of traffic through the site, and the landscaping, and in this case, the view vistas and the preservation of the dome. And, I think they've met
All those
conditions,
requirements.
All those
They have.
requirements, yeah.
And done it well.
Tom has.
Tom?
I heard what you said, but I think that one of the things that's a requirement of the site plan approval, driveways into lots shall have proper alignment, as well as transitional grades and site distances for safe, convenient, and efficient access. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that we have before us, are the site distance issues. So I would like to think that we wouldn't necessarily want to approve a site plan if we didn't know what those site distance issues are. I've come across very few groups I've worked with who said, well, can you get on and off the site safely? So I think that while things have been going very well, I think the site distance issue is significant.
Yeah, I think that is too, because we've,
So do we continue this?
I think we're gonna have to continue it. Kevin?
If I may, I think there's two potential solutions. The site distances on the existing driveway in this moment are what they are. I don't know that we'll be able to have resolution from DOT as to whether or not we can cut back some of that hill in the next 2, 4, 6 weeks. I mean, it's gonna be a process. What I would suggest is potentially, an if this, then that solution, which would be, there's two potential things we can do to address the traffic on the existing driveway there. The first, as I mentioned, is limiting that to one-way past the dome. So you'll have a very limited number of spots that would be using that and exiting there. The other potential is restricting that to a right-hand turn only coming out of that exit. Would prefer not to do that, but again, would be willing to if that's what's going to push this over the line. When I say if this, then that, I mean, in the event we're able to work with DOT and cut back that hill in a manner that allows for appropriate site distance, then it could potentially be opened up to two-way access again, or right and left turn access again. But the one-way access was to address the driveway distance, the driveway width, and then we think that it also was going to limit the amount of cars that are using that existing driveway.
I agree with you on both of those counts.
Is there some way we can deal with that as a condition so that they're done with us and can deal with MassDOT and yet it would meet the requirements?
The board is the board, and you can condition those things as you like. Just site distance is one of those, very fundamental issues about getting on and off the site. And it's been my experience that applicants, no offense to anybody in the room, are considerably more motivated to get that legwork done, particularly with a group like Mass DOT, and no offense to Mass DOT, they're lovely people. But they are a bureaucracy, and it takes a while to churn through those things. I'm not trying to hold up anybody's project, but I'm trying to assure that we've got our ducks in a row and we're not approving something that, doesn't comport with our site plan regulations. So my own personal opinion would be to ask for the continuance, ask for an extension if necessary, and, get busy with Mass Highway on what are the options for dealing with the site distance.
That would be mine as well, because historically, this board has turned projects down because there's insufficient site distance until they can improve it. So, not that we're gonna turn this down, but I think there needs to be every effort made with Mass DOT, and certainly the changes that you've just mentioned to make that one drive safer.
I would ask that we could condition it on right-hand turns only, because it's the left-hand turn that has the distance. If we can condition that exit to right-hand turn only, would then have to come back for any change to the site plan review, but would allow us to still move forward in an appropriate manner without putting a 2-month break on this.
I agree with Tom.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. And this is, we all want it to happen, but we want it to happen within the parameters that we have to meet.
And DOT can be snarky at times, and nothing against DOT, but, I mean, I prefer to wait until we have something concrete.
Could we understand what Kevin's proposing? Because what he's proposing is to change the use of one of the driveways so that the site plan,
I understand that.
That eliminates the DOT issue,
issue isn't there.
or the site
So
distance issue.
that-
It's still there, but it's not as bad.
No.
If you limit it to a
It
right-hand
isn't
turn
there.
only.
As long as it's enforced, then it's okay. And if they are able to actually work with DOT at whatever speed DOT can work, they can go back and change that, but, so that they would have right and left turns possible. But if it were conditioned on right turn only, then there's not an issue, right?
My understanding with the site distance issue is that it's when you are at that easterly exit and look towards Woods Hole Village, that there's an issue with seeing an appropriate manner and knowing what's coming around that current turn. So if that's limited to right-hand turn only, you're not gonna have cars turning into that traffic lane. So if, by limiting that, we're essentially eliminating that site distance question until such time as we've gone to DOT and had it's in our interest to be able to turn left out of there. would prefer to be able to do that anyways. I think it makes for a better site. That being said, I think we could condition it with a right-hand turn only that would allow this project to, again, continue moving forward without running afoul of the site plan regulations, because we're no longer going to have a distance with that site distance question, an issue with that site distance question.
You won't get T-boned, you might get rear-ended.
No, hopefully neither.
Kevin, can I
Yeah.
ask you a question? The other thing that you're kind of hung up on now is the preservation of the dome. Can you start construction? I mean, it was my understanding you couldn't start construction prior to the dome being rehabbed.
We can, my understanding, and I believe I'm getting this right, is the dome will be rehabbed in conjunction with the construction. It's not the dome, I don't believe it's that the dome must be rehabbed before any construction can begin. There's certainly, I don't think that it's fair to say have a hang-up with the preservation of the dome, because that's the intent. It's our stated intent that the dome will in fact be preserved. And I think we've made that, repeated that pretty consistently. That is, any approvals from this board, from zoning, from the historical commissions that will be going in front of, are going to have a requirement for preservation of the dome. And that's also what we want to do, not
That's
just
part
because
of
we're
your
required
covenant
to.
too, right?
It is, yes.
So,
Well, actually, the covenant says that to the extent the dome can be preserved, it shall be preserved. We've determined that it can be preserved.
so the Mass DOT is your biggest hangup right now?
I think right now, with this board tonight, I think our issue is whether or not, well, the existing driveway that's there doesn't have required site distances. So what I've suggested is, in order to address that we restrict that to right-hand turn only, which right now you can turn left out of there. By restricting it to right-hand turn only, from that one easterly exit, it would still provide with two-way, right and left turns out of the westerly exit, and would address that site distance question until we're able to go and work through the DOT process. My experience with DOT is, it can take 6 to 8 months sometimes, and I'd really rather not have this in limbo for 6 to 8 months.
Kevin, would that also keep the 5-foot sidewalk from being built? Because DOT would have to approve of that too. It's cutting into their property.
Certainly, I mean, but we have the time, we have the flexibility to have that approval take a little bit longer while we continue going through our permitting process with the other steps. And then, but we're a little bit hamstrung because zoning won't act until they have planning's decision. And we're looking to have the zoning and the planning decision before we go to historic. And, so to the extent that the decision is going to be conditioned upon sidewalk approval, we're going to have to have that approval before we can get our building permits, but it's not going to stop the permitting process.
Okay.
I don't know, people have been coming out of there for 50 years, and it's got a much better line of sight than Two Ponds Road does.
Oh, yeah, that's a horror.
I mean, there are a lot of worse places to pull out of onto Woods Hole Road.
Well, I'm remembering back to the gentleman, I wish I could remember his name, who said he had been a state official, he'd had a long experience with building projects, that if people have been making an effort to make use of the Nautilus property and make something of it for a long time, they've run into obstacle after obstacle, some of them created by bureaucracy, some of them created by recessions. Things can happen, and here we have a really good project. It's well-financed, it's going to go forward if we make it possible, and I wish we would put some wind in their sails so that they would be able to get going on it. We don't know what the future would bring, and every delay creates an opportunity for this opportunity to evaporate. It would be better, knowing that it's a good project, to let it go forward with the stipulation that it's going to be a right-hand turn so that we are in good keeping with the site around the corner.
And with the residents exiting on the western driveway,
Right.
how much traffic is the dome actually going to generate as opposed to when it was a restaurant?
It's not.
Probably not.
Not.
So,
Well, and particularly not over the time when it takes a while to build these things. And that's the term of time during which they're going to be trying to make full use of it. They don't especially want whatever the traffic is from the dome going through their entire project, which is what this actually means.
right.
And it
to
should be.
them. So they are well motivated to get the change in place and have the time to do it while the project goes forward, instead of sitting and waiting.
Well, we cannot vote it tonight, Charlotte, because we do have to have a decision in front of us to vote with all of the words in it, the conditions, so we absolutely can't vote it tonight.
But we could agree among ourselves that that's our intent.
And then Tom would have to come up with something, Tom and Corey would have to come up with something that would sufficiently condition it, if that's possible, to cover the open items still.
Well, and the change to the right-hand turn.
I think we can get plans submitted very quickly that'll address some of these open items.
Okay.
Can I just ask Tom a quick question? If we were to do this by having this be a right turn only, what impact does that have on DOT? Or does it have no, I mean, if we make a decision and then DOT says, what are you people doing? Why did you, I mean, I'm not sure of how the interaction goes between DOT and conditioning something prior to them having any input on it, into it.
I'm not clear either. It'd be the conversation we'd have with the folks in District 5 at DOT. They might say, well, if this is a right turn only, then you need X sight distance. If it's going to be in both directions, you will need, X plus whatever that other distance is. But that is, that's that discussion that they would have to let us know what their requirements are. So I really can't, sort of forecast what.
No, I wasn't suggesting you could forecast, although I know you have tremendous powers, but I was more concerned about what happens if we make a decision and then DOT just says, no, that's absolutely not acceptable.
Then I guess they would have to come back and amend their plan. That's why, that's why this is such.
You can make a turn either way now.
Right.
So Tom, is it fair to ask you to see what you can do with appropriate conditioning?
You have amazing powers, I've been honest.
Yeah, I know.
Tremendous turns out.
Yeah,
But-
With the
Cor-
draft
And
motion
if you
for next week.
can't, then we've got to revisit
Yeah,
this.
so Corey and I will look at drafting these. I think that it certainly behooves the applicant to set up something with Mass DOT, and something I'd be happy to attend. I've been to Mass DOT for UPS facilities in Kingston and for other sort of developments and things like that. They've got a spec, they've got a standard. Typically, the larger a bureaucracy is, the more difficult it is for them to work around whatever their standard is. But standards are standards for a reason. Like that 7,000 square foot lot, should it be 69.99? No, 7,000 is that minimum lot size. So I certainly think that, we should be making some, at least have an introductory discussion with MassDOT to find out their take on this particular site.
So there are three major holdups here, and that is Mass DOT, the Mass Historic, and our Falmouth Historical Commission. And those three have not had anything to say yet, all three of which might require changes to what we would be approving. Is
The
that
di-
correct?
the
Is
difference
that-
from my perspective is if, let's say that we approve the site plan with the location of the buildings and their relationship to the dome. And both Falmouth Historic Commission and Mass Historic Commission says, no, we want more spacing around the dome. That's wholly within their control. It's on their site. They have whole control over that. In the case of Mass DOT, they don't because the site distances aren't on their property. The site distance issues, the constraints to the site distances are off their property and in DOT's right of way. So that's why that's such a, so much different from those other requirements. In fact, in the discussions that I've had with various planning board members, if there was some lack of resolution about the half story, that I would not be looking for the applicant to redraw all their building plans to comport with that half story if that is in fact the requirement, but just to say that we're approving the plan contingent upon you resubmitting building plans that show that it complies with the bylaw. I am not about having people spend their money to redraw plans and have them, just have to redraw them again. It doesn't benefit, other than the engineers, and engineers gotta eat too, designers have to eat too, God bless them. But I just don't wanna be spending their money on continually sort of moving things back and forth. So in this case, if Mass DOT, or if Mass Historic said, yeah, you're gonna have to change that orientation, it would have to come back to the board, and we would have to take a look and make sure that moving those buildings around, however that might be, doesn't affect other parts of the site and drainage and things like that. So there is a bit more room, but all those things are wholly within their control, while the site distance issue isn't. And you can't always mitigate 100% to get that site distance, but DOT may have some other tools to help with that mitigation. Sometimes it's a flashing beacon sort of thing that, limited site distance, blind driveway, those sort of things. But it requires meeting with Mass Highway and presenting their, what the issues are and what potential solutions are.
So if you,
Therefore, we could go ahead.
The board may proceed as it wishes. You guys are the board, and you can vote as you like.
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how'd you like to play?
yeah,
Yeah.
now, is it premature?
Jeez.
I haven't been at very many planning board meetings where someone said, yeah, the site distance isn't okay, but it should be fine. Now, the mitigation that Mr. Clowers suggested, one way in, one way out, that might be just fine, but frankly, we don't know. I think that in the next 2 weeks, we'll look at drafting some things for you, but I think that there's gotta be, within those 2 weeks, certainly there's some robust discussion by the applicant with Mass DOT about what their options are for the site. And have at least a bit more headway than what we've got right now, where we said we have a site distance that doesn't comply, and those guys are gonna figure it out. That doesn't give, that's very generous of you. But I would think that we'd at least have sort of some options that have been, vetted by at least a preliminary discussion with the applicants and Mass DOT on the site distance.
I misunderstood something. If you're making only a right-hand turn, the site distance does comply.
I don't know,
Isn't that
My
what you're
underst- that's my
representing?
Been
understanding.
okay for when Y zoned it, once he was approved,
Right.
that project was
So we're
approved.
not asking to approve something that doesn't comply.
I don't know if it does.
Well, it's been represented to us.
My understanding is that the site distance that is in question pertains to taking a left-hand turn out of the easterly exit. And if we're no longer taking a left-hand turn, it would stand to reason that that site distance is not an issue, because it's only that turn
There.
that is problematic.
If you're
I am
turning
not
into
an
the
engineer,
hill,
though.
it's a problem. But if you're turning downtown to Woods Hole, not.
You still have to have a certain site distance.
Well, but then you do have the site distance
And again,
you
I believe
need.
it's only in that one direction that there's a site distance issue.
Possibly, I don't know.
I'd just like to mention, we have a deadline of March 29th. Our next meeting is the 26th, so there's not a lot of time to put this together by the next meeting, because the agreed deadline
I know,
by the applicant is the end of the month.
I know. I think we should ask for an additional extension, just in case.
We go back before zoning on the 18th of April, because of town meeting. So, it would be our preference to have this resolved sooner, but we would, of course, rather end up with the right decision.
Everything to do is shoot for the 26th, and if there are issues still outstanding there, then we.
Which, I
Be
mean,
prepared to,
let me
but
put it
let's
this way,
try to
we're
get
not
it
gonna
done.
ask you to vote on a decision that you're gonna say no to,
Right.
if you're not comfortable with it.
right, so what I'm saying is be prepared
No,
for an
and
extension.
certainly understandable.
So,
If it's needed.
yeah, if it's needed.
So the calculated site distance from the eastern driveway by the dome, heading towards town is 237 feet. I don't have the standard in front of me, but in the file here, but I believe it's 300 plus for that design speed. From the western driveway, the site distance to the right is 250 feet. So for traffic approaching from Woodhull Village. The site distances are both sub 300, 237 and 250. So there's a site distance issue on both of the driveways.
Okay.
And at some point, somebody has to be able to make a left to get out there. I don't know that you make right-onlys on both, and
It doesn't do any good, you have to go through the whole village.
Exactly. So, you know, we've got site distance issues on both entrances. To the west towards the village, it's 237 from the dome entrance. It's 250 from the Sands of Time entrance.
And they both need to be 300.
I don't have that sheet right here in front of me, but my recollection is the number was 3 and change.
What has happened in the past, and I've never been on this board when there's been a past, because we're always talking about roads that are being created. What has happened in the past where there have been these situations that have been there for a long, long time? And that's the way they are. Do you have any information on that?
Well, things that have been there for a long, long time get to be there for a long, long time because they don't have to meet the contemporary standard.
Right.
It's when you have a site plan before you and you're applying the current regulations to it, that's when you have that issue.
And I understand that, but the driveways are coming out and they're not going to be able to be changed because of the topography of the land there. And I don't know how to look at that. Historically, from other situations, I'm telling you, help.
Yeah. So in Kingston, a development just before I left, we had an issue with a residential development. And there was a site distance issue, and the issue wasn't the curvature of the road or the slope, it was the height of the road. So some of the discussions were, well, can you take 2 foot out of Route, I'm gonna call it 58, I don't remember what number it was. Can you take 2 foot out of the height of Route 58 up that slope? Well, that's a very hard thing for a residential development doing, 40 units or so to do. But that was a vertical site distance. I think the challenge here more is in seeing down the line. And it may be an issue of just cutting back some of the slope. It may be an issue of cutting back some of the vegetation, probably a combination of both. In the case of this proposal in Kingston, where they couldn't practically say, yeah, we're gonna lower the road by 2 feet for this 800 feet of road, they did some mitigation, and some of the things that came out of that were some rapid flashing beacons about, danger, Will Robinson, whatever, for the people who remember Lost in Space. An alert of some sort. So I think that the idea is we really don't have any idea what the solutions are.
Right.
Because you look at the lay of the land here, it's a curve the full length of it, so the only place you could extend that is if you cut the driveway and curved it in front of the dome building itself to give you more visibility, but.
Yeah, but there's topography
that's-
there.
Yeah.
Right, right.
can't.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
you need a tremendous
You know, there-
retaining wall.
There really isn't any place that you could make a drive come through there. And I'm sure
That's-
the reason they did it there was the topography
Yeah,
allowed it to be done
that's what
there.
I'm thinking. We've
I
been
think,
here a
I think
long
it's
time.
worth pointing out that this issue will be true no matter what the development on this site is.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause it's not relevant just to what our proposal is.
No,
So
that's why I'm asking the question,
Yeah,
Kevin.
so I appreciate it.
I don't know.
I have to say it sometimes. But I think what we can do is try to condition it in such a way and offer limitations and certainly the appropriate mitigation as we work through the process with DOT. But I think that we could condition it in such a way that this board could be happy with the decision that's rendered. And then to the extent that there are changes, whether rendered by Mass Historic or whether rendered by DOT, the applicant's fully aware and happy to come back to this board as the project evolves. But, we need, in order to move forward, we need the first step. And
This is why we're trying to
I-
work this through like this.
I understand, and I appreciate it, and I do.
I wasn't on the board for the Wise decision, but I'd be curious to see what that was, what the conditions were for
The
that
whole
site plan,
decision.
that site plan review of that project, because it was approved,
I guess,
Yeah, it was.
yeah.
that's what I'm saying, I guess, yeah,
yeah.
so.
So I'm wondering
I
if,
can offer some insight into what the Wise approval was.
Please.
I wasn't here when it was approved,
Right.
but they had conditioned it so that it was one way in and one way off the site. So the entrance by the dome was the only way in, and the exit by the Sands of Time was the only way out. The difference with this project and that project is our intent is to have the dome open to the public and not
Yeah.
just the residents of the development.
Yeah.
So, our hope would be to have some two-way exit out of the easterly entrance so that you don't have visitors to the dome going through the entirety of the site.
Yeah.
The WISE project there was no public access for the
Okay.
dome.
So
Okay.
Well, Pat,
Yes.
it sounded as if we kind of left it, that if the planning department could condition it in a way that is compliant with the right
Correct.
turn, that we could move forward.
And
So
it comes
really,
back with us,
it comes back
to us with a decision on the 26th.
with a draft that we can look
Mhm.
at
Right.
to see. And as Tom said, some work could actually begin. One, we could find out exactly what is that compliant number, and we'll have more information by then.
I have never seen a decision rendered, though, that we say, well, if, then, and it doesn't work, then, I've never seen a
I think that,
decision like
I
that.
think what would happen, as I picture this, it could easily wind up, there won't be a decision, because they find in trying to draft it that there's not a way to do it that in fact is compliant, so that we're covered, and the town's covered, and the applicant isn't looking at a no decision.
Right.
Then we would have a continuance.
Again, you're only looking at people having to make a right-hand turn that are visiting the dome. Won't be the residents.
There'll be
Right.
very few
So-
doing that, I'm sure.
Right.
So I did manage to find the spec on the DOT, Falmouth DPW's website.
Oh.
So it calls for design speed, and I don't know what the design speed for the highway is, but the posted speed out there is 35 miles an hour. So at 35 miles an hour, the length of sight distance legs for a left turn is 335 feet. For a right turn is 290 feet.
200 and what, Tom?
290 feet,
And there's 237?
290 feet for a right turn, 335 for a left turn. And as we just saw, those sight distances were.
Trucks barreling down there.
And they do.
You said it was 237 and 250.
So from the eastern dome entrance, it is 305 to the left and 237 to the right. And from the Sands of Time, the western entrance, it is 250 to the right and 315 to the left.
The problem on that side, it's curved and it's steep, and the trucks come down there fairly quick.
So
Until
do
we have to make a
cars.
left-hand turn. That's a concern, really, with the sight distance, I think. But we should be able to overcome it.
Or not.
Oh,
Site may be impossible
How
to
many
overcome it.
accidents have occurred there?
I hear the sirens.
You know,
They're there.
and I go back to the Ballymead thing, when I questioned why the lights at Sam Turner, they weren't gonna put, no concern, yet there was 6 fatalities at that one intersection.
Right.
In the 35 years I've been here, 6 fatalities. And, you make decisions, I thought, based on things like that.
It is.
How many fatalities and how many accidents.
I believe our engineering team has pulled together the traffic, the accident issues. And the accidents in that area have been centered around Church Street.
Yeah.
Because you're coming up that pretty significant hill. And
Yeah.
I don't like turning left off Church
Yeah.
Street. I don't like
Yeah.
coming that direction from Church
Yeah,
Street.
it's terrible.
But I don't believe there was any information about accidents to or from the dome.
Yeah.
No, it's just that hill right there, in general. So, Tom, you'll see what you can come up with, and if you can come up with something that we could vote, okay. If you can't reasonably come up with something that protects the board, the town, then we will have to ask for an extension.
Okay, we'll put something together, but like I said, I think we've got some legwork to do, the applicant.
Oh, definitely.
With MassDOT in the interim as well.
And if that can't be done satisfactorily, then we'll have to ask you for another extension.
Understood. And I think, I think realistically, there has to be some reasonable solution here because, because the site is the site and the driveways are where they are. And unless the board's gonna render that entire site
Unbuildable?
unbuildable, which is not ideal, among other things. But I can't imagine that's the just outcome from that. So I think there has to be some reasonable solution that we can get to.
Okay, so there are still a few open things that
Yep,
you
we have a few
to
things we gotta do, and we're
note
gonna.
on the plan.
Mhm.
Try to sit down with the
We'll reach
DOT.
out, we'll have, I think the engineers are probably the best conduit to DOT, and we'll have them reach out immediately.
Okay. And,
So Charlotte has to withdraw her motion?
yes, Charlotte does have to withdraw her motion.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, and you accept
Second?
it? Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, so then we will see you on the 26th?
Sixth.
26th.
I wait with bated breath, thank you.
All right, and
Thank
please
you.
feel free to CC me on any emails to Mass DOT.
Sure.
Be happy to be part of that conversation.
I think that's your agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'll tell you a story. We had, my husband's law office
Supposedly.
was right on this side.
There he is.
That's disappointing.
3 cars
Hmm.
came off of his house
Thought you
and
went home.
smashed right into the office.
Maybe you
Yeah.
have those data.
Okay, what do we got left here?
We got committee reports.
No, all the good stuff.
We'll chat a little bit afterwards.
Okay, we keep committee reports and Davis Straits Multifamily on. First, committee reports. Does anyone, Paul, do you have something you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I'm the representative of Coastal Resiliency Action Committee and the Water Quality Management Committee. On the Water Quality Management Committee, the meeting this week on the 7th, or last week, I guess it was, on the 7th, had some very, very interesting presentations. One was by Chris Neal on the Coonamessett River, and he gave an update of the 6-month project they're doing, and it has been pretty positive, so he'll give another one later on in the second 6 months. The second one was by Maureen Thomas from the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and she looked at 6 different systems for wastewater treatment, and they're looking at the operation and maintenance. He's coming up with some very interesting comments as to removals and how effective they are and so forth. It was very technical, but it was a very good presentation. The third one was Brian Howes talking about the Bournes Pond oyster aquaculture. And he talked a considerable amount of time about the 3 farms in Falmouth where they have different levels and different number of bags, and they're getting 50 to 75% removal in the near field. So they're having some pretty good success with that, and they're looking at scaling it up for a basin-wide operation. And the last presentation was Dan Rogers, who's teaches at Stonehill College, and he's responsible for the eel pond aquaculture, and they're looking at different bags, at floating bags, in mid-level bags, and bottom bags, and see how effective they are. Early on, the bottom bags aren't terribly effective, which is not surprising. But all 4 presentations were extremely interesting and gave an update to the committee, to that committee, on the kinds of things they're doing.
Is that Eel Pond or Eel River? Is it Eel
I
Pond
wrote
in
Eel
Woods Hole
Pond.
or
Eel Pond, that's where the bags are.
in Woods Hole? Because there's Eel River in East Falmouth.
Yeah, not sure.
I wouldn't want to eat oyster out of Eel Pond in Woods Hole.
I'll take better notes. And the second one was the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee. Had a meeting this afternoon, and the state issued the request for proposals for grants, just came out early this month. So we're trying to get together a number of different grant proposals, because we do have the $100,000 voted by town meeting to support the local payment for that. So we're trying to get that in by the deadline of, I think it's April 29th. So looking at a couple of different proposals that might be funded, and I think that's a very positive spin on that, too.
Are they talking about nourishing the beaches and
Probably the biggest one is nourishing beaches.
hopefully they're not going to put groins? Because they should bury the ones that are there,
Well,
is what they should do.
the committee did not recommend groins,
Okay, good.
and it was overridden by the Board of Selectmen 4 to 1. So they have to go have a permit, and they may not get a permit for groins anyway.
Yeah, I hope not.
So
And
it's
that's
a long
what's been
process.
destroying the beaches for the past 50 years.
Yeah. But there's a lot of things going on both committees, and it's a pretty exciting time to watch what's happening. There's a lot of good work being done.
Yeah.
Any other committee reports? Charlotte?
I'm the planning board representative on the Route 28 Advisory Committee, which has been a really successful committee, very amicable. People have been cooperative. We've gotten tremendous support from the DPW. They've given us 3 people at each meeting to answer questions. They came out, even Sheriff Cummings came out the day we made our site visit to walk up and down the area and make notes on a map to be sure that he would be able to pick up anybody who needed a ride or block traffic if we wanted to cross the street. It's been a very well-supported committee. We had our public hearing. The engineer has drawn up a plan that reflects what the committee wanted, and what the objective of the committee was to have to meet the requirements for the state in a way that would least impact on the abutters property. So that, yes, we do what the state wants, but to the minimum. And it's wound up that there's going to be an 8-foot multimodal pathway, they're called. So there'll be a 26-foot roadway, then a granite curb, then a 2-foot vegetative buffer, then an 8-foot multimodal that's ADA accessible. It's for bikes, it's for strollers, it's for pedestrians, it's for everybody, all on the south side toward the water, for the full length from the administration building down to Oxbow. And on the other side, there will be the granite curb, the vegetative buffer. Part of it near Oxbow will be the 8 feet, but then it changes to 6 feet in order to protect trees and property and shallow front yards and some businesses. And it seems to so far be making the abutters very happy. We had, I didn't count heads at the hearing that was held at Morse Pond School on Sunday, but there had to have been 80 people there. It was really a pretty good turnout. And people were got a presentation on what complete streets mean, what the state had wanted ideally, and what they would find acceptable, and then section by section on what was being proposed for the roadway. Then the plans had been laid out on long tables in the cafeteria or across the hallway, and people could use little sticky bits to put their comments where they wanted along it. And for the most part, they were reminders, remember you said you protect this tree, kind of thing. They were not change this, do that. So it looks as if that plan will go forward now. So it's been a good result. The committee got to like itself so much that it's asked to please continue on to be advisory for the sections going through to downtown. And the people most concerned with that continuance are the people representing the bikeways.
That's great.
And I want Allison Leshen, I just would like to credit a couple of people. It was a good committee overall. We had no difficult people on it at all. Allison Leshen was chosen as the chair. She did a great job. And Jim Marshall, who was the abutter who put up the signs, you know, if you do this, there goes my yard, who has the beautiful garden there along Route 28, was the vice chair, and he did a fine job, and he is happy with the plan. And so is the other abutter who served on the committee as our secretary, Rachel. So it's worked out well.
Jim?
Yes.
Jim, can I just hit oh, sorry.
Pam first?
The Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay, can I interrupt you for a second? Can I just add a comment on this meeting here before you change subject? Thank you. I did attend the meeting, and some of the previous meetings were a little hostile. This meeting was very respectful. People asked questions, they were answered, or they said they'd get back to them, and they did work out very, very effectively. I was impressed with the amount of cooperation shown by everyone. And I would have guessed there's 100 people there, not 80.
You think? Yeah.
It was pretty, I kind of counted, and it looked like it was closer to 100.
Oh, good,
But
it was a lot of people.
I was very impressed with the meeting.
Well, and the business people, who own Wood Lumber and Jake's Tab, Falmouth Lumber, were there, so that it's not as if we'll have surprises later from the businesses.
Excuse me.
Okay, Pam?
We are forging ahead on the Affordable Housing Committee, and we're planning a large roundtable with the other communities, similar to what we did before. So we have a meeting tomorrow with one or two of the selectmen, some of the housing trust people, all the entities that feed into this. In the last meeting, we had Mashpee and Bourne, and some of the communities are really, I think, quite ahead of us. And I don't know exactly why, but when we all get together, there's a tremendous synergy and ideas that we bounce off each other, and it's really good. So somehow I got charged with running it, and I don't think we have a definitive date yet, but it's amazing how committed all of these Upper Cape towns are to providing affordable housing, and with the understanding that accessory apartments are a very small part of what the town needs, because those affordable housing units, the accessory apartments, don't go into any, they're not in perpetuity, and they're not something that's gonna help our housing stock, or heading toward our 10%, but I think is a great start, and so I'll let you know when the date is, and I think it's going well.
Is it true that 10% is calculated on the demand for housing, or is it just a flat number based on the number of units?
Based on the number of units.
Really?
Every 10 years, the census comes out with your number of housing units in your neighborhood, in your town. And so every 20 years, that number changes what your 10% is. So it's 10% of those dwelling units in your community.
And no town in the Cape has hit it, right?
I think Provincetown did.
The last time I saw it was no town, just recently, that no town has done it.
Recently, you're right.
Just, because we just have discussed this very much on the local comprehensive plan. And that's why we didn't just try to focus just on affordable housing, because we went for housing for everybody and just try to keep things moving that way. But it's really, really hard goal to reach. And bigger cities can do it because they can build great big high-rise buildings and pop them all in one place, and we can't. It's gonna be real difficult. I don't know if we ever will get to the 10%. But we keep trying.
Well, if I may just, interestingly, at the selectmen's meeting last night, I was discussing the Housing Choice Initiative, which is one of the state programs very similar to the Green Communities program, which another great operation. And we, for the second year in a row, we didn't qualify for the Housing Choice Initiative. It's based on the number of units you've produced over 5 years and some of your best practices. And some of those best practices that we don't have, that we could conceivably to qualify for this program. And the program has real money behind it. There's $250,000 that Barnstable got last year through the program for some sewer extensions in the downtown area. But one of those things are some best practices for housing, including an inclusionary housing bylaw, where every new development you build, essentially 10% or affordable, to keep you sort of idling, treading water at your 10%. The 40R zoning district, working with the state on the community compact for housing. And so at the selectmen's meeting last night, I discussed about how I wouldn't be chasing money just for the sake of chasing money, but if there are policies and there are provisions in place that we can incorporate that make sense policy-wise for the town, then we may be able to set the table next year for some additional funding through the state for affordable housing projects that include infrastructure grants and things like that. So we're 0 for 2 on Housing Choice Initiative, but the selectmen did vote in the affirmative to support our grant to Mass Development for Davis Straits Master Plan and Visioning.
No, that was my next question. We got that?
Well, the selectmen, part of those requirements are that they have to write a letter of support for that. So the selectmen are on with that. I'm writing the grant now. After here, I'll be writing the recommendations for town meeting and then back to working on the grant. Because I don't want to work too late on Pi Day. And as you know, Pi Day is the 14th. So I'm working on the grant, working on town meeting decisions tonight and tomorrow. So everybody can have a fabulous Pi Day.
That's Thursday.
Thursday, 3/14.
Thursday's Pi Day.
On the Davis Straits, we had something, a request in front of the Cape Cod Commission?
Yes.
And that was supposed to be, the timeline said it was be happening now?
Yes. We do have a draft memorandum of understanding from the Cape Cod Commission. So essentially, Cape Cod Commission says, yep,
Okay, they
You're
said
right.
yes.
Yeah, so Julian has forwarded the memorandum of understanding to Jennifer Petit, the finance director, to make sure we're good with that.
So this is gonna be doing the RFP
Correct,
for the Davis Straits for
form-based code.
form-based code. So the Cape Cod Commission is gonna start it off.
Correct.
Wow.
And that's essentially timed on completing the work for the community resilience by design. So when that product is done, they'll build on that as part of the RFP for Davis Straits. At the same time, we're working on the master plan and visioning. Hopefully, if we get a grant from Mass Development, which I've, in the conversation I've had with them, is a very competitive grant, they've told us.
So the important thing is the timeline in our PowerPoint presentation on form-based code, where we've just hit the first benchmark. That's great.
No need to change your presentation
Great.
at this time.
Well, it is, well, it's important. If we don't have that work started, not, everything else is on hold. So that's a pretty big deal. Great. Pat, sorry.
The zoning bylaw revision working group met on the 6th, and Charlotte and I are representatives from the planning board. It was a exhausting 2 hours. There was so much tossed at us. Bob and Bob have done a tremendous amount of work. But what really came out of it is that where we were planning to just regroup, they found an awful lot of noncompliance with state law. And so they're having to put wording in to comply with state law. Now, state law would always make us comply regardless of what our zoning bylaws would say. So there are having to be changes put in with that.
It's really only in one section of the code, though.
Oh, yeah.
The pre-existing non-conforming. And apparently, there's not even a firm definition of what that is. There are several different layered ones. So it's difficult to nail down. Apparently, it's one of the most difficult areas of state law, let alone just zoning law. So they're struggling with it. And in doing a side-by-side of what we have for that and what the state requires and what they're suggesting we might do, they come across big blanks in what we're doing. So we had been working with the idea that when we go to town meeting, we would be able to say, this is a recodification of what we have. We're not suggesting any policy changes. And all of our work has been predicated on that. So the thought was that we're going to this group meeting with the planning department and ZBA and all the people who've come together to do this, to just make sure they didn't leave something out by accident, really. Sort of like an edit job. But no, it turns out in this one section so far, that one section, and Bob, one Bob was sick, so Bob said, probably it'll be only this section. This section presents a different kind of a situation. So it's really reformulating the description of the project when it goes to town meeting.
It's similar to what Tom had picked up with the marijuana bylaw. Oh, the state agency had changed names.
Right.
Oh, the state agency had changed numbers.
So you get kind of a choice. Do you just recodify what we have, or do you show, oh, and here are things you're gonna have to do anyway because the state makes you do it? That's a real simplification of it, and I don't know that it was actually resolved, because that was our first meeting.
And we'll be
Most of the
talking
time
about
it
it
was
again on
that.
March 27th.
Oh, yes.
We'll be meeting more.
Okay, do we have a general correspondence file? That purple?
Weren't they all in?
I'm looking for the purple folder. That's,
I will say this, that Corey and I are nothing without our staff. Melinda is
okay,
out.
enough.
And so
We'll have it next week.
Corey and I are going, aren't we lucky to have such fabulous people working with us?
You don't know
And I
until
think
they
we
go
said
away.
that several times today, muttering under our breath, like, she does all this stuff too? So I hope Melinda's feeling better, because I hope everyone to feel better, but we work better when she's here.
This is really nice.
Future agenda items. Anybody have anything they want to add?
Nothing at this point.
What was the one? Yeah, I think we should think about what someone's gonna present at town meeting and the committee report?
What committee report?
Do we going to have a report for the planning board at town meeting? They usually ask for committee reports at the beginning of the town meeting. Is there going to be something from town meeting?
You're talking about a general report, like we're
Yeah.
working on form-based code and
Well, form-based
revision
code,
of
and
the
particularly the
bylaws.
bylaw would be the
Mhm.
appropriate thing to bring up. But is someone
We're
going to
not
make a
far enough
presentation on
along
that?
with the bylaws to do anything
Well,
with that.
we
I
had,
think.
we had talked about a committee report at town meeting to sort of set the table for November. To come to town meeting and say, here's what's up with the zoning recodification, here's what we're working on. Sort of a very exciting trailer to get people excited about the November town meeting and recodification. Hopefully, well, I won't say anything. But we did have a discussion about at the beginning of the meeting, a committee report, largely from the planning board, about just where we're at on the status of recodification and what we expect to see in November.
So we should be then working on a town meeting presentation.
That would be stuff that we'd be talking about on the 27th for sort of some
We're gonna include-
benchmarks with Bob Mitchell for those sort of things.
Anything else? Would we talk about form-based code? Would we bring that up at town meeting?
I guess it depends on how we feel about the attention span of town meeting for committee reports at the beginning.
Well, it could be very simple.
I'd make
We
it
have the
very
county talking about doing something in Davis Straits. I think that's a.
I think that's a pretty big thing, yeah.
That's a big thing. We can talk about form-based code.
Let's see what we can
talk
do.
about some other things. It only needs to be 3 or 4 slides.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be a long presentation.
right, we don't have to do the whole presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bullet-
we
bullet
could,
points.
Doing.
we say, we could,
This
with
is-
form-based code, here's the timeline. We could just go to the timeline screen, we hit the first benchmark.
This is what we're planning.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that.
Planning?
Next meeting, March 26th. That completes the agenda.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, we're done.